Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're not climbing into a soft, queen-sized bed with memory foam pillows or drifting off to the glow of your phone screen. Nope. Tonight, you're stepping barefoot across packed earth, ducking through a smoke-darkened doorway and easing into the heavy warmth of a Native American longhouse, deep in the icy chill of a northern winter. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Not because it's dangerous per se, but because the way they live is so finely tuned, so quietly masterful that most modern folks would fumble the first 10 minutes. No thermostat, no insulation foam, no heated blankets or emergency apps, just good old-fashioned ingenuity, community, and about 12 layers of fur. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this little campfire circle stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck into the longhouse, and the first thing you notice isn't the heat, it's the smell. A kind of lived-in smokiness, mixed with bark and resin, and something faintly sweet, like roasted corn. The second thing you notice? The noise. A low, rolling murmur of voices, crackling logs, shifting bodies, and the occasional thump of someone dropping a piece of firewood. This isn't a silent, sacred space. It's alive, bustling, even at night. The longhouse is home to multiple families, usually from the same clan or maternal relatives, and right now they're preparing for bed, or what passes for bed when half your life happens in the one shared space. The Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee, are master builders of these structures. Their longhouses aren't just shelters, they're ecosystems. Think of a wooden submarine turned on its side, stretching out like a spine across the winter ground. Wooden frames, bent from saplings and covered in bark panels, create the walls. Rows of hearths run down the centre aisle, with platforms on either side for sleeping, eating, or just sitting with your legs dangling over the edge like a kid at a school assembly. Above you, layered beams form a ceiling that's darker than you'd expect, stained by years of smoke curling upward and escaping through narrow vents above, or not escaping depending on the weather. A woman passes by you, nodding, balancing a bundle of sticks and a woven basket of what might be dried berries. She doesn't seem cold. No one does. They're wrapped in fur and layers of thick woven fibre, sure, but they're not shivering, not stamping their feet or cupping their hands for warmth. It's not a toasty heat. This isn't sauna living. But there's a persistent, cosy warmth in the air, like the longhouse has its own breath, cycling through lungs made of fire and wood and the steady heartbeat of human presence. You settle onto one of the sleeping platforms. The wood is rough, but layered with mats woven from cattails and reeds, soft enough under your body. Someone hands you a robe made of buffalo hide, the inside supple with wear. It smells like smoke and fur and maybe just a touch like sweat. But it's clean as anything in a world without detergent or hot showers. You wrap it around your shoulders and feel your body exhale a little. You won't freeze, at least not tonight. Above you there's a faint draft from the smoke hole, but it doesn't touch you. That's part of the brilliance. Warm air rises, yes, but the heat radiates sideways too, kept in by the walls, by the mass of bodies, and by the fire's low, steady presence. No roaring flames here. Just glowing embers and soft licks of fire, carefully fed and maintained to burn slow through the long night. It's a little surreal. You're used to houses that section off. Bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, garage. Here it's all one space, zoned by habit and custom rather than drywall. People respect invisible boundaries. That family over there, they've claimed the third hearth. Grandma sleeps closest to the fire, kids to the outer edge. The couple behind you, probably a new pair, they're whispering, their laughter low and hushed, wrapped under a single fur like conspirators. And you're the guest, you get a good spot. Not too close to the door, cold draft. Not too close to the fire, you'd sweat all night. Right in the temperate zone, socially and thermally. It's not silent at bedtime. Someone coughs, a child whimpers in their sleep, a kettle hisses on the coals, but it's peaceful, rhythmic, like the house itself is lulling everyone into the same shared breath. You lie back, staring up at the beams above you, wondering how many winters they've endured. Some longhouses were maintained for decades, rebuilt, added to, handed down like a family recipe. A scholarly debate still lingers about how these longhouses were originally heated. Sure, we know the hearths played a central role, but there's been speculation about whether other heat sources, like heated stones or animal body heat, played a larger part than we've acknowledged. One anthropologist even suggested that sleeping arrangements were optimized like heat maps, grandmothers near the centre, teens near the edges. No hard proof, but honestly, it checks out. Then there's the quirky fact that some of these longhouses were so long they had up to 50 people living inside, sometimes more. 50 people, one building, one fire line, and they didn't just survive, they thrived. Organised, communal, deeply connected. Every sound, every breath, part of a larger harmony. As you begin to drift, warmed by fire and fur and the low thrum of nighttime life, you catch a glimpse of a small boy sneaking a chunk of dried meat from a basket near the fire. No one stops him. He curls up next to what might be his grandmother and gnaws quietly, just another moment in the rhythm of the Longhouse night. Outside, the wind whistles through the forest, a high, lonely sound. But in here, you're part of something old, something layered and wise. You might not survive this forever, but tonight you're warm, welcome, and wonderfully alive. The cold is patient. Outside, it lingers like a predator, coiling around the trunks of the bare trees, icing over riverbanks and creeping into cracks and crevices. But inside the longhouse, there's a quiet defiance, a kind of handcrafted resilience built into every beam and wall. You sit up under your buffalo robe and start to notice the details. This place isn't just surviving the cold, it's built to outwit it. The walls are layered with sheets of elm bark, stripped and softened during the warmer months, then shaped to curve and overlap like fish scales. Beneath that, the framework is a skeletal arch made of saplings, bent and lashed with rawhide cords. There's no metal here, no nails or screws, just natural tension and balance. It flexes slightly in windstorms, like a living thing, but it holds strong. The way it curves inward at the top isn't just for aesthetics. It traps rising heat, keeping it from escaping too easily through the smoke holes above. And then there's the floor, which you realise isn't entirely level, it's slightly sunken. A lot of longhouses were built into shallow trenches, intentionally dug a few inches or even feet into the ground. Why? Because earth is an insulator. Cold air sinks, but the thermal mass of soil retains heat better than exposed wooden floors ever could. You press your hand to the packed earth beside your sleeping platform. It's not warm exactly, but it's not frozen either. That's already a small miracle when you remember that the outside temperature could be in the negatives. The longhouse, for all its simplicity, is a masterclass in passive insulation. There's no wasted material, no wasted effort. Even the bark panels aren't just slapped on, they're tied in layers, overlapping like shingles to shed rain and trap air. And air, oddly enough, is one of the best insulators available, so long as it doesn't move. The stillness between the bark and the interior creates a thermal barrier, holding in the warmth like a down jacket holds in body heat. As the night stretches on, you start noticing how people arrange themselves within this space, not just socially, but thermally. The closer to the central aisle, the warmer it gets. That's where the hearths are. Each family gets their own, spaced about every 5 to 7 feet along the centre line. The fires are kept low and steady, with just enough wood to glow without blazing. Too much heat and the smoke becomes unbearable. Too little, and, well, let's just say hypothermia doesn't wait for morning. The longhouse breathes. Air moves in slow, lazy spirals, not drafts. You watch the smoke rise from the hearth and swirl just below the ceiling beams, escaping eventually through the narrow smoke holes above, but only just. These holes are a mystery of their own. You'll hear conflicting theories about whether they stayed open all winter or were covered during storms. Some scholars argue they had bark flaps, or even sliding wooden panels to adjust airflow like a chimney damper. Others think that's wishful thinking, that people just learned to live with a little smoke in their lungs. Either way, it's functional. You're not coughing, your eyes don't sting, and that thin haze above your head is warm. It traps the heat and reflects it downward. You can almost feel the thermal layers in the room, colder near the walls, warmer by the fire, hot just under the rafters. In this architecture, even the air has a role to play. A young boy shuffles past you barefoot, carrying a split log longer than he is tall. You wince, imagining the cold seeping through his feet, but he doesn't flinch. He places the log on the edge of his family's hearth and turns it expertly, with a crooked stick, poking the embers until the new wood begins to hiss and smoke. He nods to himself, satisfied. and returns to his mat. No fuss, no praise, just part of the rhythm. You start to think about how little this world has changed over centuries. There are traces of similar structures dating back thousands of years. The Iroquois didn't invent the Longhouse, they refined it. Their design, tailored to the forests of the Northeast, evolved over generations. Families expanded, buildings grew longer, ventilation improved, fire management became an art. And yet, even with all this precision, there's still debate among modern historians about just how effective these buildings were against extreme cold. Some argue that without modern insulation they couldn't possibly have been that warm. Others point to archaeological finds like charred wood, compressed floors and soot stains as evidence of sustained effective heating. One fringe theory even suggests that longhouses were strategically sited to maximize solar exposure, aligned east to west so that the southern wall caught the most light during winter days. No one's proven that, but it's the kind of idea that makes you want to go outside with a compass and squint at the sky like a suspicious raccoon. What is clear is that these weren't just shelters, they were ecosystems. Heat, airflow, family structure, and even sleep patterns were all baked into the design. It's not just about staying warm, it's about staying together. You're not warming yourself, you're warming the space, and the space is warming everyone. A quirky detail catches your eye. Bundles of herbs hanging from the beams above. Not just for cooking, you're told, but for scent and sometimes even insulation. Mugwort, cedar, sweetgrass, they release subtle smells when the fire gets going, masking the earthy funk of 50 people in a room with no showers. Some were burned occasionally to purify the air, or to ward off whatever spirits might have crept in with the cold. You lie back again and pull your buffalo robe tighter. The fire crackles. Someone turns in their sleep, and all around you the architecture holds. The cold waits just beyond the walls, but it doesn't come in. Not tonight, not with bark, earth, fire, and a few thousand years of human stubbornness standing in its way. You'd think a roaring fire would be the centerpiece of every longhouse in winter, right? Big flames, glowing red logs, warmth blasting out like a medieval furnace. That's how we imagine it, grand and blazing, like a fireplace in a ski lodge. But no, that's the kind of thinking that gets you smoked out and half asphyxiated before midnight. Fire in a longhouse isn't about drama, it's about discipline. Each hearth, shared by two families, one on either side, is kept deliberately small. Low, glowing embers with just enough flame to radiate warmth, cook food and boil water. You can forget the campfire scene with sparks flying and marshmallows on sticks. These fires are calm, almost meditative. You watch one now, its flicker barely reaching past your knees, and realize how much of its heat is meant to soak into the space quietly, not flare up and burn out in a rush of drama. That doesn't mean the fires are weak. Far from it. The trick is in the maintenance. All through the night, someone from each family, usually the elder, the lightest sleeper, or whoever happened to be nudged awake by a child needing to pee, gets up and tends the fire. A log here, a stir of embers there. The fires never go out completely. They just shift gears like lungs breathing slow in sleep. You notice that the wood being used isn't thick or knotted. It's thin, straight and dry, often cedar, maple or birch, carefully stored during the warmer months. The logs are split into manageable sizes, nothing too bulky or dense. Big wood takes forever to catch and smokes like a wet dog. These people aren't playing lumberjack, they are playing chemist. The fuel is chosen to burn cleanly and efficiently because smoke is the enemy. Longhouses don't have chimneys, that's important. There's no flue, no magic pipe to suck the smoke out. What they do have are those narrow smoke holes running along the roofline. But whether they work perfectly, that's where things get murky. On a calm night like this, the smoke drifts upward and out slowly. But on stormy nights or windless evenings, it can settle like fog just above your head. You're lying under this suspended cloud of wood smoke, blinking up at beams that haven't seen daylight in months. And that's when you realize they didn't just manage fire, they lived with it. That means living with its dangers too. Every year, probably, someone's hearth flared too high. A mat caught fire, smoke filled a corner of the longhouse too fast. They had no fire alarms, no sprinklers, no emergency exits. If something went wrong, it went very wrong, very fast. That's why control mattered so much. Fire wasn't a luxury. It was a living force to be respected. In fact, oral traditions often include stories about fire spirits. Not gods exactly, but living presences that required attention and care. You didn't toss garbage on the fire casually. You didn't laugh at its behaviour. You fed it, spoke to it, sometimes even thanked it before sleep. Some longhouses had little customs, like sprinkling cedar needles on the coals or muttering a few protective words before banking the fire for the night. Maybe superstition, maybe just a way to stay mindful. There's also a running scholarly debate about just how smoky longhouses really were. One camp insists the smoke holes were efficient enough to vent most of the fumes, especially with low fires and good airflow. Another camp argues that smoke inhalation must have been a constant health issue, contributing to respiratory problems we can't easily detect in skeletal remains. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Some nights were clear. Others, you coughed yourself to sleep and woke up with gritty lungs and sticky eyes. And still they lived, thrived, and built more longhouses. Now here's something weird, an odd little fringe theory that you probably won't find in mainstream textbooks. A few researchers have suggested that longhouses were intentionally designed to trap a certain amount of smoke below the ceiling to serve as a mosquito deterrent. Think about it. In warmer months, that thin layer of smoke might have been a shield against biting insects. In winter, the bugs are gone, but the idea of using smoke as a deliberate environmental tool is kind of brilliant. A smoky halo to keep you bug-free and warm? Not bad for a bunch of people without bug spray or HVAC system. But back to tonight. You sit by the fire and watch one of the older women across the aisle lean forward and nudge a half-burned log deeper into the coals with a hooked stick. She does it without speaking, without looking. Her hands move with muscle memory that's older than language. It's like watching a musician tune an instrument mid-song. Her family's fire responds, burning a little brighter, a little steadier. No big flare-up, no smoke burst, just quiet, cooperative heat. A girl, not more than 10, slides out from under her sleeping robe and tiptoes over to warm her hands. She doesn't talk, just squats beside the embers, palms hovering. You wonder if this is part of her training, an unofficial apprenticeship in the fine art of not freezing to death. Maybe that's how the knowledge passes down, not in formal lessons, but in nighttime movements, fire whispers, silent approval when the log is placed just right. Eventually the girl tiptoes back to bed. The fire hums along. The smoke above you drifts in lazy spirals. You shift under your robe, grateful for the steady warmth on your feet. It's not tropical. It's not even particularly cozy by modern standards, but it's enough, just enough to keep your fingers from going numb, your breath from fogging up your vision. And maybe that's the real point. These fires aren't about luxury, they're about enough. Just enough to get through the night. Just enough to keep the cold at bay until the sun crawls over the horizon again. Because in here, not frozen is a success story. Still breathing is a gold star. And that slow, disciplined fire in the centre of the longhouse, that's the heartbeat making it all possible. You'd expect bedtime in a longhouse to be a lights-out, total quiet, everyone snoozing situation. But no, sleep here flows more like a tide than a clock. People drift off at different times, wake up randomly, and move about in the dim glow of the hearth like shadows underwater. No one announces, "It's bedtime." The fire gets lower. Conversations soften. Someone starts singing a lullaby that's not really a lullaby, just a low melodic hum like smoke turned into sound. You lie there listening, realizing that sleep, like everything else in this place, isn't a solo activity. It's communal, it's layered, it's fluid. You shift slightly on your mat, adjusting the edge of your robe. Across the aisle, a baby is crying, not a loud wail, just a small fussy sound that's more apologetic than demanding. A woman, likely the mother, pulls the child close, tucks them under a fur wrap and rocks them gently, while whispering something in a language you don't understand. It works. The baby quiets. A minute later, you hear a man coughing, deep, throaty, like a shovel scraping through gravel. Another woman stirs, passes him something, a cup maybe. He drinks. They settle again. There's no bedtime routine the way we think of it. No brushing teeth, no checking phones one last time, no melting into a 10-minute TikTok spiral, but there's rhythm. People ease into rest in small clusters, like fireflies blinking out one by one. Elders are often the first to sleep. The days start before dawn and the warmth of the fire is basically a sedative. Kids, of course, resist. You see one boy trying not to yawn as his father tells him some story about a giant bear with human eyes. is halfway between myth and bedtime nonsense, but it works. The kid eventually slumps sideways, head on his father's lap, out cold. Sleeping arrangements aren't random. You notice that families tend to stake out predictable territories. Same hearth, same corners as night after night. The older generation sleeps closest to the fire. That's both a mark of respect and a survival tactic. Elders have weaker circulation, they chill faster, but they also tend to wake more easily, which means they're the natural fire watchers. It's no coincidence that grandma sleeps 2 feet from the glowing coals. Then you've got the young adults, cousins, older siblings, the ones with strong backs and late-night energy. They sprawl further from the centre, closer to the walls, wrapped in thicker robes, often paired up with siblings or even just a trusty dog. Sometimes they're up whispering, even giggling, until someone shushes them with a theatrical groan. Still, no one enforces bedtime. It's all unspoken, known, understood. What's interesting is the gentle choreography of the night. Someone gets up to use the communal pot near the back wall, yes, that kind of pot, and everyone else pretends not to notice. A child sits up, rubs their eyes, and is immediately handed a strip of dried fruit or venison. Someone turns in their sleep, drawing a robe tighter, and the sound of their movement is absorbed into the longhouse like a drop in a sponge. Nothing jerks, nothing crashes. It's like watching people sleep in a well-rehearsed ballet. And you're in it now, a part of this low-lit, warm-breathed, smoky dream world. You try closing your eyes. The noise doesn't stop, but it softens. Snoring rises and falls. Fire crackles like it's whispering secrets in a language only the smoke can understand. There's the faint creak of a beam above you as it settles. A breath beside your ear. You realise someone shifted closer, not intrusively, just drawn by your warmth like moths to flame. No one here sleeps totally alone, and yet there's an alertness to it all, a kind of shared awareness that lingers, even in rest. You see it in the way people react to subtle shifts, the fire popping too loud, the wind outside changing tone, a strange rustle near the door. You suspect there's always at least one person half awake at any given moment, ears tuned for trouble. Not paranoid, just ready. And that's the key to this whole setup. Sleep here isn't an escape. It's a pause, a light doze with one foot still in the waking world. Historically, it's likely this staggered, overlapping sleep was intentional. Scholars believe Native American sleep patterns, particularly in communal spaces like longhouses, followed more natural cycles of biphasic or polyphasic rest. That means people didn't sleep in a single uninterrupted block. Instead, they might sleep for a few hours, wake up for a bit to tend the fire, share stories or even snack, then drift off again. The concept of an 8-hour, solid solo sleep is mostly a modern industrial invention. Here, sleep is modular, adaptable, shared. There's even some historical documentation. French missionaries and early colonists wrote with bafflement about the natives staying awake and talking in the middle of the night. It wasn't considered odd. Midnight was simply a different kind of time. A moment to stir the fire, adjust the bedding, check in with the spirit world, more on that later, and maybe even laugh a little before drifting off again. In some longhouses, this midnight hour was when dreams were shared aloud, interpreted communally and woven into oral stories. Not dreams like, I was flying and then my teeth fell out. No, real dreams, with meaning and message. It's hard to know how common this was, but it makes you wonder, when your sleep isn't private, your dreams probably aren't either. Now here's your quirky little tidbit for the night. Some families reportedly slept with their feet toward the fire and heads away from it, forming a human starburst around the hearth. Not for comfort, for safety. Feet are harder to burn than faces, and if a log rolls or sparks pop, better to lose a toe than an eye. It's the kind of practical logic you don't learn until your blanket catches fire once. You lie still for a long time, soaking in this slow-motion storm of sleep. The heat rises gently. Your breath fogs just barely. Someone near the far hearth starts a low, rhythmic snore that sounds like a soft saw going through butter. Someone else answers with a louder theatrical sigh, maybe in protest. You're not sure. No one moves to stop them. This is the music of the Longhouse night, and somewhere just outside, the cold presses closer. Snow falls, ice creeps, but it can't get in. Not tonight. Not through all this layered life. The warmth here isn't just from fire. It's wrapped around you, layered on your body like a slow-burning secret. You don't just sleep near heat in a longhouse, you wear it. And if you're lucky, you're buried under so much fur and woven material that you can't even feel the cold trying to sneak in. The night deepens, and as your body relaxes, you start noticing every texture brushing against your skin. The robe over you is buffalo hide, thick, dense, and still holding the ghost of a prairie wind in its folds. It's heavy, but not suffocating, more like a protective shell that breathes with you. Beneath that is a cattail mat, coiled tight and surprisingly soft. Cattail fluff collected during the warmer months is dried and bundled into mats that act like ancient sleeping pads. They're rolled out on the wooden platform, cushioning your hips from the hard planks and adding just enough bounce to prevent bruises. Some people even stuff their mats with dry moss or milkweed silk, early biodegradable memory foam. No one here is roughing it for the sake of toughness. Comfort is survival. Rest is strategy. If you're part of a wealthier or more respected family, maybe you're sleeping under robes made from tanned moose or elk hide, with the fur turned inward for extra warmth. If your family hunts bison, especially out west, that hide is like gold, soft, pliable, and deeply insulating. And if you're really lucky, someone's added beadwork to the edges, not because beads are warm, but because even in the dead of winter, even in the middle of survival, humans still find a way to make their world beautiful. You shift and notice something else. The blanket you're under smells ingenious, familiar, not like laundry detergent, but like smoke, earth, and a little bit of animal fat. And yes, maybe the faintest ghost of sweat, but not in a gross way, in a lived-in way. Everything in here smells like something, someone. Because when your materials come from the land, your bed doesn't just hold your body, it holds the memory of the animals, the grasses, and the hands that made it. People sleep close. Sometimes whole families share a single platform. Children curl against parents. Siblings clump together like wolves in a den. A couple shares a single buffalo robe and somehow makes it work without freezing their toes off. If you're new here, someone has lent you a blanket and space near their fire, not because they had extra, but because they made room. Generosity isn't a bonus in this world. It's required for survival. Across the aisle, you spot someone adjusting their robe to better cover their feet. The movement is fluid, practiced. They know exactly how to fold the corners to keep warmth in. No one here just tosses a blanket over themselves and hopes for the best. There's a kind of ancient origami to this, precise wrapping of body, fire, and fabric. Tuck the edges beneath your legs, curl sideways to reduce surface exposure, pull the hood of your fur cloak over your head to trap your breath and warm your nose. This is sleep as a calculated retreat from the cold, and still, even with all this preparation, it's not perfect. Cold creeps. You wake occasionally to adjust, pull the robe higher, re-warm your hands, or shift closer to someone radiating heat like a small sun. That's just the cost of sleeping in a building made of bark and saplings during a northern winter. And yet, it works, not just barely, comfortably. There's a scholarly debate, because of course there is, about how much heat these materials actually retain. Some anthropologists argue that fur alone couldn't have kept people warm enough, and that longhouses had to be significantly warmer than we think. Others suggest that the layers, combined with shared body heat and insulating architecture, created a surprisingly stable microclimate. And while there's no definitive measurement of the internal temperature of a 17th century longhouse, we do know this. The people weren't freezing. They were having babies, raising kids, getting old. You don't do that if your toes are falling off every February. A lesser-known fact, though, is how diverse these bedding setups could be across tribes. The Iroquois longhouses are the most famous, but among the Cree, Huron, and other northern tribes, variations existed. Some used mats layered with fur and moss. Others relied on caribou hides or woolen trade blankets once Europeans entered the picture. Some longhouses even had small raised sleeping enclosures built into the side platforms, kind of like bunk alcoves, that could be partially closed off with hanging skins for privacy and added warmth. That's right, ancient bunk beds, but make it fireproof and forest core. You shift again, and your hand brushes the smooth edge of a fox fur lining. It's stitched to the inner fold of your robe, likely for neck warmth. Someone did this by hand, with bone needles and sinew thread, probably while sitting exactly where you are now under the same beams, listening to the same wind howling just beyond the walls. You start to understand that warmth here isn't just a physical condition, it's a legacy. 1,000 hands preparing, shaping, sewing, and wrapping warmth into every corner of life. And then, almost humorously, you spot a dog. Just a scruffy, half-curled heap of fur near someone's feet. You didn't even notice it come in. It's pressed close to a teenage boy who clearly considers it more heat source than pet. Dogs aren't just for hunting or barking at shadows. They're literal sleeping companions. Some are trained to curl beside children or elders during the night to add body heat. That dog, that's someone's furry farting space heater, and it just earned its keep. You're realizing now that warmth in this world isn't a passive thing. It's hunted, prepared, layered and maintained. It's strategic. And yes, it smells a bit like damp fur and campfire. But when the wind outside is slicing across the trees like a frozen blade, that scent is the best perfume in the world. So, you breathe in the mix of wood smoke and buffalo hide. You feel the cattail mat beneath you, the robe around your shoulders, the subtle vibration of others sleeping nearby. You're not freezing. You're not even uncomfortable. You're swaddled in centuries of hard-earned knowledge, one careful stitch at a time. Above you, a faint haze curls along the roof beams, its edges glowing with the flicker of firelight. The smoke hole, such a simple idea, such a strangely complex reality, draws it upward, sort of. Not in a straight line, not quickly. It swirls and drifts, like it's in no particular hurry to leave. And now you're squinting at the opening above, wondering, is that thing even doing anything? Welcome to the smoke hole debates here. One of those oddly intense arguments that archaeologists and historians can't quite agree on, because nobody left behind a blueprint labelled, "Here's how this works." What you're looking at is a narrow slit that runs along the peak of the Longhouse roof, sometimes covered with adjustable bark flaps, sometimes left open. In theory, it lets smoke escape and fresh air enter. In practice, well, depends on the weather, the fire, and whether the spirits are in a generous mood. Tonight there's barely any breeze outside. You can hear the wind rustling the trees, but inside the air is still, which means the smoke kind of just lingers. It rises lazily, coils near the beams, and gradually fades upward. If you were taller, you'd probably be breathing it, but here, lying down with your head a few feet above the floor, the air is clear and breathable, barely. If the fire flared higher, you'd feel it in your lungs pretty fast. Some historians argue that smoke holes weren't as helpful as we assume. The idea that they vented smoke like a chimney might be a bit too generous. In calm conditions, smoke doesn't magically rise and disappear. It pools. And in a structure the size of a small boat flipped on its side, even a low fire can fog things up. But here's the catch. The Longhouse wasn't designed to eliminate smoke. It was designed to manage it. There's a strategy to where you put the fire, how you build it, and even where you sit. You notice that no one is directly over the flame, not even close. People sit off to the side, low, angled slightly so the smoke passes above their heads. The architecture funnels airflow just enough to keep it from turning into a smokehouse, but not so much that it lets heat escape. Because if you want to stay warm, you can't let the heat run off with the smoke. It's a trade-off, a bit of breathing discomfort in exchange for not freezing to death. A fringe theory, one that might sound ridiculous until you really think about it, suggests that longhouses needed a certain level of smoke build-up to act as insulation. Smoke in just the right quantity actually slows heat loss by creating a thin thermal barrier near the roof. It may have also helped kill airborne pathogens or deter pests from nesting in the rafters. You're basically sleeping inside a living, breathing balance between warmth and ventilation, and nobody's got a thermostat to make it easy. Then there's the real wild card, rain and snow. What do you do with an open slit in the roof during a downpour? The bark flaps come into play here. Simple panels that could be propped up or laid down depending on the wind. But were they effective? Possibly. Though some scholars think people just tolerated a bit of weather now and then, especially if it meant keeping the fires going. If a little snow drifted in, you brushed it off and moved on. If the smoke hole dripped on your forehead, well, welcome to winter. You roll slightly on your mat and glance up again. The beams are blackened. Years of soot have painted them the colour of burnt toast. Every longhouse carries that smoky patina, layer upon layer. It's part of the architecture. A living memory of every fire ever lit, every night someone stayed warm because that hole, even if imperfect, let just enough of the smoke out and just enough of the heat stay in. Someone coughs softly a few mats down. Not a sick cough, just the kind that happens when your throat gets dry and the air is more campfire than oxygen. Another person stirs and fans the fire with a bundle of pine needles, sending a fresh burst of resin into the smoke stream. The smell is incredible, sharp and clean, cutting through the haze like a forest breeze. It's not just for the scent. Pine needles burn hot and fast, giving the fire a small boost without overwhelming it. Another delicate balance. That's the word that keeps coming up, isn't it? Balance. This entire space is a lesson in it. The fire must be hot enough to warm, but not so hot that it smokes out the room. The smoke hole must let fumes escape, but not so freely that it steals all the heat. The flaps above must shield from snow, but not block airflow completely. There's no single answer, just a spectrum of judgment calls that people here make every night, based on wind, temperature, and a lifetime of experience. And yet, with all this complexity, you realise something odd. No one's panicking. No one's scrambling to adjust a dial or Google how to fix the draft. The people here know. They feel the air shift. They watch the angle of the smoke. They smell the fire's mood like a chef smells bread to know when it's done. It's instinct, earned and passed down, not documented in instruction manuals. You close your eyes again, breathing slowly. The air isn't perfectly clean, but it's breathable. Warm enough to relax your shoulders, dry enough to let your robe hug your skin instead of clinging with damp. And that subtle haze above you? It might be doing more than just drifting lazily around the rafters. It might be saving your life. Outside, the snow starts to fall harder. You can hear it now, a soft hush, like sand being sifted gently through trees. It dusts the Longhouse roof, packing gently over the smoke flaps. You wonder if it'll block the hole completely, but no one inside seems concerned. The fire still burns, the air still moves, the balance still holds. The smoke hole debate rages on in academic circles. But here, right now, you understand why the people inside never bothered to argue about it. They lived it. They adjusted. They adapted. They got up and added a log, stirred the coals, checked the flaps. They didn't write about it in journals. They just kept the fire going. And so do you, wrapped in buffalo hide, breathing pine and smoke, listening to snow-traced lines across the sky. You feel the space settle again into its slow, sleepy rhythm. The Longhouse breathes. You breathe with it. It's late now. Deep velvety night. The kind where even time seems to have curled up in a corner somewhere and nodded off. You're not sure how long you've been lying here. Could be minutes, could be hours. Everything is soft around the edges. The fire still glows, quiet and steady, painting the walls with its flickering brush strokes. And then you start to really listen. Not just hear, listen. The Longhouse is never silent. It breathes, it shifts, it tells a story every night, whether anyone's awake to hear it or not. First there's the fire, the constant companion. Not roaring, not cracking dramatically like in the movies. Just a low, rhythmic pop now and then. A hiss as a damp knot burns off. A gentle crumbling as a log surrenders to the heat. It's the sound of persistence, survival. Then come the people, dozens of them, all around you. You'd expect chaos, snoring, tossing, whispering, but it's more like a murmured symphony. Someone snores, yes, but quietly, politely, like their nose knows it's sharing space. A child whimpers in their sleep and is soothed almost instantly by a parent's touch. Feet shift on mats, a throat clears, someone exhales with a grunt that sounds like they just punched the ghost of a bad dream. And then there's the dog again. You'd forgotten about him. He shuffles in his sleep, lets out a small humph sound and stretches one paw against the side of someone's calf before curling tighter into a furry coil. His breathing is loud, surprisingly so, but no one minds. He's part of the warmth equation, a living, snoring blanket with a cold nose. You focus deeper and begin to notice the sounds outside the Longhouse too, bleeding in around the seams. Wind pushes through the trees in long exhalations, rising and falling like ocean waves. Somewhere far off, a branch snaps with a sound that makes your spine stiffen just a little. Could be a deer, could be something else. Either way, no one inside stirs. They're used to the language of the night. You're the only one still translating. A soft thump comes from the roof. Snow sliding, or maybe a bird shifting, or maybe not a bird at all. You remember hearing stories earlier in the day, tales about spirits that walk the roof at night, brushing their hands along the smoke holes, peering in. Nothing malevolent, just watching, listening. The thought should spook you, but it doesn't. In this moment, it actually feels comforting, like you're not alone, not even in your dreams. Night sounds in a Longhouse are layered with memory. Oral histories passed down for generations say that spirits speak through the timbers, that if you're still enough, quiet enough, you can hear the ancestors creak through the beams and whisper in the bark. And now, lying here, you believe it. That slow groan from the wood above your head, that's not just the house settling, that's a sigh, ancient and familiar, stretching its arms after a long day of holding people close. One of the more debated topics among scholars and you can just imagine them squinting through tiny glasses at dusty records, is how Indigenous people perceived nighttime soundscapes like this. Did they find the creaks and groans eerie, comforting, neutral? There are conflicting theories. Some say these noises were woven into spiritual practices, the house treated as a living presence, a guardian. Others argue that once you live in a longhouse your entire life, the sound becomes background. You don't hear it anymore, like the hum of your fridge or the whisper of your laptop fan. But one charming lesser-known fact. Some oral traditions refer to night sounds as lullabies of the house, or not sung, but given. It's as though the building itself is tucking you in, not metaphorically, literally. The hiss of the fire, the shuffle of footsteps, the sigh of snow sliding down bark, it's all part of a sonic cocoon designed to keep you calm and alive. Someone near the middle hearth begins humming. It's barely audible, a kind of droning note that rises and dips like a bird circling in slow motion. Maybe it's a dream spirit song, maybe it's just a habit. Either way, it doesn't wake anyone. It belongs here, sliding into the noise without a ripple. A few feet away, another voice hums back softly, like an echo, then both go silent. You're lying perfectly still now, not out of fear but reverence. You don't want to break the spell. The noise in here is sacred somehow, or at least sacred enough. Even the annoying sounds, someone grinding their teeth, a baby passing gas, the rhythmic sound of someone scratching their scalp under a fur hood, it's all life. It means you're not alone, and that is an enormous comfort in the cold. Outside, the wind picks up. The bark siding of the longhouse rustles faintly, like paper rubbing together. Snowflakes begin to tick against the roof so light they sound like whispers. You think absurdly that it sounds like someone quietly shushing the night, and maybe they are. Your mat creaks as you shift slightly, and for the first time you wonder how old it is. Passed down, remade every year, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it supports you, that it holds your weight while the fire holds the heat, while the walls hold the weather out, while the night holds your mind in a kind of spell. And when you finally close your eyes again, it's not silence that lulls you to sleep, it's everything else. The sounds of bodies, fire, wind, dreams, 100 tiny noises, each one perfectly placed like the bones of a bird's wing. You're not alone, you're never alone in a longhouse at night. Privacy. Let's talk about that word for a second. In your modern world, privacy is practically a birthright. Doors with locks, walls with soundproofing, headphones, do not disturb signs, and little personal zones you can retreat into when you've had enough of everyone else. But in a longhouse, you can forget it. Privacy is a luxury nobody expects, and strangely nobody misses it. You're lying here in the middle of the night, maybe drifting back towards sleep, maybe just hovering in that delicious zone between awake and dream. Around you, 20, 30, maybe 40 other people are also tucked into their own furs, some snoring, some murmuring, some turning on their mats like restless cats. And yet, no one's irritated, no one's groaning about being crammed in or asking for their own space. You get the sense that everyone here knows exactly how this works. They've grown up with it, from the moment they were wrapped like a burrito in their mother's robe as a newborn. This is life, this is home. Each family has its section. You can't see painted lines or fences or nameplates, but the division is there. It's spatial, habitual, and enforced through social cues so old they don't need to be spoken. That family by the second hearth, that's their territory. Everyone knows it. You don't sit on their mats, you don't borrow their firewood without asking, and you definitely don't sleep on their side of the aisle, unless you want the world's softest scolding and the community equivalent of side-eye. It's one of the most fascinating aspects of communal living in longhouses. How something as sensitive as sleeping, the most vulnerable time of day, is managed with this elegant system of mutual respect and invisible boundaries. Nobody adores, nobody has a room, and yet everyone has a place. You might think tempers would flare. That packed together in one giant wooden tube, people would eventually snap, arguing about noise, about snoring, about someone stealing someone else's spot near the fire. But instead, what you see is an incredible amount of patience, a rhythm of give and take that keeps the peace. There are unwritten rules, sure. Like don't bring drama to the fire after dark, don't gossip when someone's trying to sleep, don't hog the warmth, don't make unnecessary noise. You break these rules and the response isn't punishment, it's social recalibration, a gentle word from a grandmother, a sharp glance from someone 2 hearths down, a cough that's not really a cough. It's like everyone's in on the same unspoken script. And when someone does need privacy, say a couple wanting to be alone, or someone dealing with grief, or an elder needing quiet time, it happens through quiet shifts. A blanket is raised, a child is gently redirected to sleep by someone else for the night. People avert their eyes, the noise around them softens. In a space with no walls, the boundary becomes behavioural. It's less about creating distance and more about offering grace. Now let's not pretend it's all seamless harmony. There's conflict, of course. People are still people, and not even the cosiest longhouse is immune to sibling fights, marriage spats, or someone getting moody because their mat's colder than usual. But conflict here doesn't explode. It simmers, then cools, mostly because there's no room for sustained grudges. You literally can't walk away and slam a door. You deal with things, or you wait. Or sometimes you talk about it at the fire instead of after the fire. Anthropologists have long been fascinated by this dynamic. The idea that such a densely populated space could function without regular collapse is frankly baffling to people raised in a culture of personal space and bedroom doors. But it turns out that when community is non-negotiable, people get very, very good at adapting. The lack of privacy forces communication, cooperation, and an almost artistic awareness of each other's moods. There's an old Iroquois concept called the good mind, the idea that people should act in ways that promote peace, harmony, and balance within the community. That includes what you say, how you act, and yes, even how you sleep. It's not just about keeping the fire going, it's about keeping the vibe going. You notice this especially among the elders. They don't say much, but they watch, and their silence holds weight. If an argument sparks near the hearth, all it takes is one raised eyebrow from an elder, and the whole thing cools off like a dropped coal. It's not authoritarian, it's respected. A reminder that the house isn't just a structure, it's a family. And here's your quirky fact for the night. Some longhouses reportedly use auditory privacy tricks to manage sensitive conversations. For example, during tense discussions or emotional exchanges, people might stir the fire loudly, shuffle mats, or even start a rhythmic chant in the background to create a kind of acoustic screen. It's like the 17th century equivalent of turning on the bathroom fan when you need to cry. Ingenious. You wonder what it would be like to live like this full time. No bedroom, no locked doors, your whole life nested inside one long smoky room filled with cousins, laughter, arguments, and the steady crackle of fire. On one hand, it sounds suffocating. On the other, it sounds safe, warm, held. Every night you sleep knowing that someone is always awake, that there are ears listening for danger, hands ready to stoke the coals, hearts that beat in sync with yours. It's not just a roof over your head, it's a world wrapped around you. So when you finally shift on your cattail mat trying to find a cooler spot for your foot, because yes, even in winter it's possible to get too warm under 2 layers of fur and one dog, you do so without fear of disturbing anyone. And when your neighbour rustles beside you, adjusting their robe and pulling it tighter under their chin, you don't flinch, because this is just how it is. One giant room, many lives, all tuned to the same nocturnal frequency. There's no privacy here, but there's intimacy. And that might just be better. Sleep in the longhouse isn't just a bodily necessity, it's something more, something sacred almost. You're beginning to feel it now as your mind loosens its grip on the waking world and starts to drift into that liminal space where thought becomes dream. And in here, within these smoky, humming walls, dreaming isn't just a side effect of rest, it's an event, a journey, maybe even a responsibility. The Iroquois and many other indigenous cultures don't draw a hard line between dreaming and waking. Dreams are considered real, not in the physical sense, but in terms of meaning. They are messengers, teachers, warnings, and sometimes even instructions. When you dream here, you're not just entertaining your brain with some weird theatre. You're travelling, you're receiving, you're participating in something beyond this longhouse, beyond this night. As you lie back, the warmth from the hearth wrapping around you like a gentle tide, you start to think about that. What happens when an entire community sees sleep as a spiritual endeavour? For starters, they take your dreams seriously, not in a tell me what happened kind of way, but in a what is this dream asking of you kind of way. The line between the dreamer and the dream is blurred. You don't own your dream, you carry it, like a message in a bottle that washed up in your subconscious. In some Haudenosaunee traditions, dreams aren't just shared, they're acted on. If someone dreams that they need to dance or sing or craft a specific item, that dream might trigger a ceremony. a real physical response to a metaphysical whisper. And if someone dreams that the community needs to do something together, plant a certain crop, hold a gathering, make peace with a neighbouring clan, people listen. Dreams are considered the voice of the soul, and to ignore them would be like ignoring a knock at the door from a very insistent ancestor. You remember hearing earlier that some dreams are considered wish dreams, messages from the inner self, expressing desires or emotional needs. Others are spirit dreams, where the dreamer interacts with powerful beings or forces that might guide, challenge, or even scold them. And still others are dreams of warning, filled with symbols that need to be interpreted carefully, sometimes by an elder or a healer trained in the language of the other world. And that's what you're stepping into now, tucked under your buffalo robe, your breath shallow and slow. You feel your mind loosen, like a knot coming undone. The fire flickers behind your closed eyelids, and suddenly there's a flicker of something else. An image, a white deer, a path through snow-covered trees, a sound that might be a flute, or maybe just wind. You're not sure how long it lasts. Time bends differently here, both in dreams and in longhouses. But when you stir again, blinking up at the smoke-darkened beams above you, there's a moment of pause, a strange clarity. Did you just dream? Did it matter? If this were your real life, your permanent home, you might tell someone. An elder, maybe. A cousin. You'd share it in the morning, sitting by the fire while stirring cornmeal. And they'd nod and help you unravel its meaning. Not with a dream dictionary, but with the kind of wisdom that only comes from generations of paying attention to what the universe says when your eyes are closed. Some families believe that the spirit temporarily leaves the body during dreaming. Not in a dangerous way, but in a curious, exploratory one. The spirit goes out, gathers knowledge, and returns before sunrise. That's why you're always careful how you wake someone, never with a sudden jolt. You give their spirit time to come back. You ease them into waking like drawing a canoe to shore. There's a fringe theory, only held by a handful of researchers, that suggests Longhouse sleep patterns may have been structured, at least loosely, around shared dreaming. That certain nights or seasons were more dream active, and that people might intentionally sleep at specific times to catch the right kind of dream. It's not widely accepted, but it's a tantalizing idea that a whole family or even a community might dip into the same dream current, like leaves floating on the same stream. And here's your quirky detail of the night. Some people believe dreams could get stuck, that if you didn't share or act on a particularly vivid or troubling dream, it might lodge in your body like a thorn, causing unease, sickness, or even bad luck. The cure? Speak it, sing it, dance it, act it out, release it like a trapped spirit needing to stretch its legs. Someone in the longhouse stirs near the fire. You hear them murmur softly, possibly sleep-talking or maybe speaking to a dream. You can't make out the words, but the rhythm is calm, deliberate. Maybe they're telling someone what they saw. Maybe they're still half dreaming, their spirit not fully back in their bones yet. It makes you wonder what kinds of dreams these people carry. Dreams of animals speaking, dreams of lost relatives returning, dreams of fires that burn with no smoke, of rivers that flow backwards, of trees that walk. Are these visions, warnings, or just the way the mind processes the quiet roar of winter and fire and memory? You roll onto your side and close your eyes again, half hoping the white deer returns. The fire hisses behind you. The dog shifts at someone's feet. The longhouse breathes its deep, smoky breath. Dreams come easy here. They have room to stretch. You wake, not all at once, but in that slow motion way where your body stirs before your brain catches up. Something's different. Warmer, softer, or you blink into the dark, the fire still glowing low, and realize there's a small child pressed up against your side, one foot draped casually across your leg like you're their favorite pillow. You have no idea where they came from. Welcome to another night in the Longhouse. This sort of thing happens all the time here. Kids migrate like sleepy nomads, moving from parent to cousin to grandparent in the middle of the night, guided by warmth, instinct, and whatever fragment of a dream sent them walking half-conscious across the floor. No one stops them, no one gets annoyed. If a child shows up in your blankets, you make room. That's just how it works. You glance across the aisle and see an elder woman curled near the fire, bundled in layer upon layer of fur and hide, her breathing shallow but steady. She's probably the oldest person in the house, bones brittle, hair thin as snow, but still here, still present, still very much part of the rhythm. She's sleeping closest to the hearth, like she always does. That's not just tradition, it's survival. The Longhouse isn't organised by status or age so much as by warmth hierarchy. Babies, elders, the sick, anyone vulnerable, gets prime real estate by the fire. The middle generation, the strong ones, sleep farther out, forming a buffer zone of body heat and readiness. Kids drift where needed, often between generations like little living bridges. And that warmth you feel? It's not just from the fire. It's from this organic, flexible arrangement, human insulation refined over centuries. If you think this system is accidental, think again. It's deliberate, thoughtful. Every person has a role, even in sleep, that elder woman near the hearth. She's not just there to stay warm, she's also the firekeeper. Her sleep is lighter than everyone else's, and if the coals die down, she'll wake, stir them, and maybe even hum a little song to the flames like she's speaking to an old friend, which she probably is. And the kids, they're not just warmed by others, they give warmth. Their bodies are little radiators, and everyone knows it. It's not uncommon for a child to be tucked into the crook of a grandparent's knees, sharing heat in a way that feels natural, even necessary. You start to realise warmth here isn't owned, it's shared, passed around like food or stories or laughter. There's a surprising amount of movement for such a sleeping environment. Someone quietly passes by with a bundle of firewood. Another person slips outside, probably to relieve themselves, their robe pulled tight and hood up. No one blinks. This kind of nighttime motion is normal. It's part of the flow. No one guards their sleep like a dragon hoarding gold. Sleep is public, communal, fluid. And even in this half-lit hush, care is everywhere. Someone carefully tucks the buffalo robe back over the elder's shoulder. A mother adjusts a child's sleeping mat, nudging it slightly closer to the warmth of the fire. A teen boy lays amid another log on the hearth without waking anyone, then slides back under his blanket like a shadow. It's choreographed without ever being rehearsed. This brings us to one of the great marvels of Longhouse life, the way it protects its most fragile members, not through force or technology, but through tradition and attention. There's no baby monitor, no thermostat, no emergency backup generator humming in the background. There's just instinct, habit, and a deep cultural understanding that survival is a shared task, not a solo mission. Historically, this was crucial. Winter was hard. It wasn't just cold, it was dangerous. Illness struck hardest during these months. Children were vulnerable to fevers, elders to the slightest drop in body temperature. And yet people survived. Thrived even. Because they slept close, watched over one another, and moved together like parts of the same animal. There's a fascinating academic discussion about how indigenous family structures, particularly among the Iroquois, functioned as both social and thermal units. Scholars note that sleeping proximity wasn't just about love or family connection. It was also a calculated method of resource distribution. Heat being the resource. Everyone gives, everyone receives. It's a kind of warmth economy. Your quirky fact for this section: in some winter ceremonies, children would be formally wrapped in shared robes with elders, not just for warmth, but to symbolize the transfer of knowledge and protection. Sleeping together wasn't just a comfort. It was a ritual of continuity, an embodied teaching moment stitched into the fabric of survival. You glance back at the child beside you. They're still asleep, mouth slightly open, one hand curled under their cheek like they've just won the Best Nap Award. Their tiny chest rises and falls steadily, warmed by your shared space, your shared breath. You don't know their name, doesn't matter, they're yours for now. Everyone's is. Outside, the wind taps at the walls with soft fingers. The Longhouse creaks in reply, but no one stirs. The fire glows. The elder shifts, her hand reaching toward the embers, not to poke them, just to feel their warmth. It reminds her, maybe it reminds all of you, that she's still here, still part of this, still giving and receiving heat like everyone else. And as you sink back into your own rest, the child tucked close against your ribs, you feel a kind of quiet peace settle in your bones. This isn't just a place where people sleep, it's a system, a cradle, a community of breath and body and warmth, all tuned to the same slow heartbeat. The Longhouse doesn't fight the cold. It absorbs it, diffuses it, overcomes it not with force but with presence. And tonight you're part of that presence. One more ember in the human fire. You wake to the soft thump of paws. Not heavy, not threatening, just the muted shuffle of something four-legged weaving its way through the mats and sleeping bodies. And then, there it is, a nose, cold and damp, pressed briefly against your hand, followed by a snuffle, and the quiet, unmistakable sound of a tail thwapping gently against someone's fur blanket. A dog. Or more precisely, another dog. Because as you blink the sleep from your eyes and sit up slightly, you realise this isn't an isolated visitor. There are at least 3 of them scattered across the Longhouse like furry living heating pads. They're everywhere, curled near children's feet, sprawled beside the hearths. One is literally sleeping with its head resting on the back of someone's calf, breathing in perfect sync like they're part of the same dream. And none of this is accidental. Dogs in the Longhouse aren't pets in the modern sense. No squeaky toys, no matching sweaters, no Instagram accounts. These are working animals. Yes, but also family. They earn their place by being vigilant during the day, alerting the community to danger, helping in the hunt, and then by night. They become heat generators, dream companions, and security blankets with teeth. You watch as the dog that visited you trots away, ears twitching, at some subtle noise outside. It stops by the doorway, gives a low, barely audible growl, then settles again. Not an alarm, just a note. Something's out there, I've got it, you stay cozy. And with that, it curls back up, nose to tail, and disappears into a tangle of firelight and shadow. No one seems disturbed. In fact, you get the sense that every hearth has its own unofficial dog assigned. Some are likely bred within the Longhouse community. Strong, compact, resilient breeds adapted to cold climates and close quarters. Others may have wandered in over time and simply stayed. If they're quiet, well-behaved, and good at keeping small toes warm, they earn their keep. It's not just dogs either. Though rarer, you might find other animals tucked into corners of the Longhouse, usually small ones. Chickens, if they're raised nearby. A ferret-like hunter used for catching vermin. Particularly bold cat, maybe, if there's grain to protect from mice. But it's the dogs that truly belong here. Their presence is woven into the nightly rhythm like logs in the fire. Expected, accepted, needed. Anthropologists have long studied the human-animal bond in indigenous communities, and among northern tribes, the relationship with dogs is especially nuanced. These animals weren't simply tools, they were companions, often named, sometimes spoken to as if they understood every word. And if you've ever seen a dog stare into a fire like it's solving the mysteries of the universe, you'll understand why people believed they were more than just animals. Here's your fringe theory for the night. There are some oral traditions, rare but fascinating, that suggest dogs could act as dream guides, that they could travel with you into the spirit world, guarding your path, warding off nightmares, and helping your soul find its way home by morning. That cold nose brushing your hand just now, that might not have been random, that might have been your escort. And even if you're skeptical about that idea, you can't deny the effect they have. The air in the Longhouse is warmer than it should be, the kind of warmth that comes not just from fire, but from dozens of living bodies, 2-legged and 4. Each dog adds to that biological furnace, stretching it just a little farther to the edges of the space. In the deepest parts of winter, this isn't a convenience. It's the difference between a good night's rest and frozen fingers. There's an elder across from you who has a dog practically glued to her hip. It's a squat little thing with a grizzled coat and one ear permanently flopped to the side like it gave up halfway through standing up. It doesn't move much, just twitches its ears every now and then, but you can tell it's tuned to her completely. If she so much as stirs, it lifts its head, alert. There's no leash, no command, just an understanding. And maybe that's what defines Longhouse life more than anything else. Understanding without instruction. No one here tells the dogs where to sleep. They just know. They find the children, the elderly, the coldest corners, and they fill them with presents, not demanding anything in return. The smell in the air shifts briefly, a mix of wood smoke, dog fur, and something sharp and musky that might be fox. Someone must have worn their winter hunting cloak to sleep again. It's not unpleasant, just honest. Everything here smells like life, lived in, layered, earthy. You notice that the dogs, despite being animals, follow the same social etiquette as the humans. They move quietly, they don't bark unless it's absolutely necessary. They step carefully around sleeping bodies, pause before approaching someone unfamiliar, and always circle a few times before settling down as if checking the temperature of the universe. One gets up now, stretches with a big sigh, and pads over to a teen who's shivering near the edge of their mat. Without fuss, it nestles against them. pressing close. The teen doesn't wake, but you see their body relax almost immediately. The dog closes its eyes. There's something deeply soothing about it, something ancient. You begin to understand why no one thinks it's strange to share a sleeping space with animals. This isn't a wild world of predator and prey, it's a system of mutual care. A reminder that sometimes the best heaters are the ones that snore softly and smell faintly of wet leaves. Outside, the snow continues to fall. You can hear the soft hush of it settling onto the bark roof, the wind rising now and then to stir the drifts. One of the dogs lifts its head and growls again, and low and brief. Another joins in, not barking, just acknowledging. A call and response between guardians. But no one inside moves. They trust the dogs. The animals keep watch. They warm the feet of the future and the bones of the past. And as you shift slightly, pulling your robe tighter, you feel that quiet trust settle into your chest. You're not alone in this longhouse, not even close. You're part of a living network of fire, fur, and breath, woven together against the cold. Something's off. Not in a dramatic, panic-inducing way, but in that subtle, instinctual way your body recognizes before your brain catches up. You're not shivering exactly, but the air against your face feels cooler. The fire isn't popping anymore. It's quiet. Too quiet. You open your eyes and glance toward the hearth. The coals are there, still faintly glowing, but the heat has dropped, and the light barely stretches beyond its own shadows. It's not out, but it's tired, like a breath that's been held too long. And then comes the sound you didn't realize you were waiting for. A cough, dry, rasping from someone farther down the aisle. Another follows, fainter. Someone stirs, not a full wake-up, but a groggy motion, an arm shifting, a robe being tugged higher, a child scooting closer to their mother's side. It's the Longhouse responding to the temperature the same way it would to a baby crying, automatically, collectively. When sickness comes in the winter, it doesn't knock on the door. It slips in under the eaves, settles in someone's lungs, and announces itself into the dark. Coughing, shivers, a restless tossing that sounds louder in the stillness of night. No one gasps, no one panics. It's expected. Inevitable, even. And that's where the real work begins, not with medicine cabinets, but with knowledge. You watch now as an older woman, the one who always seems to be awake at the right moment, gets up slowly and rummages in a woven bag near her sleeping area. She pulls out a bundle of dried herbs tied together with twine. Cedar, sweet flag root, maybe a little bearberry leaf. It's hard to see exactly, but the smell confirms it. She drops a pinch onto the coals, and almost immediately the smoke changes. It thickens, sweetens, fills the vato space not with fog but with remedy. You inhale, not deeply, just enough. There's a sharpness to it, almost medicinal, and under that, a softness, like moss in sunlight. The air feels better somehow, not cleaner but more intentional. This isn't just about scent. This is medicine, smoker's treatment, crafted over generations. A steamy, aromatic shield against whatever winter's trying to sneak into people's lungs tonight. Traditional medicine in the Longhouse doesn't always look like medicine. Sometimes it's a tea brewed from white pine bark and yarrow, passed in a carved wooden cup from one warm hand to another. Sometimes it's a paste of bear fat mixed with spruce resin, rubbed on the chest to ease coughing. Sometimes it's a steam bath, a miniature version of the sweat lodge experience, made with hot stones, water, and a blanket pulled over your head like a tent. Tonight, it's smoke. You watch it rise in slow spirals, carrying with it the ghosts of roots and leaves harvested back when the sun was high. This moment was prepared for in July, when people were out gathering, drying, bundling, all so that here in January they'd have the right remedy at arm's reach. One of the sick people stirs. A mother sits up beside him, her son maybe, and rubs his back in long, slow circles. She murmurs something low and rhythmic. A song or a story, or both. And just like that, the sound of the cough seems less alarming. It's surrounded, cared for. No one's rushing for isolation or antibiotics. The response here is softer, slower, but no less serious. There's an ongoing academic debate about the efficacy of traditional indigenous winter medicine. Some researchers dismiss it as folk belief, spiritual fluff with no biological impact. Others argue that these remedies, especially the use of medicinal smoke and herbal infusions, had real antimicrobial properties. And then there's the third group, who suggest that even if the chemistry isn't fully understood, the effectiveness can't be denied. When you treat sickness as a communal issue, When you wrap care in ritual and familiarity, the healing begins before the herbs even touch the fire. Here's your quirky fact for tonight. In some traditions, the smell of certain herbs like sweetgrass or juniper was believed to literally frighten away bad spirits or the sickness demons that entered through dreams. Whether symbolic or not, people took it seriously. Certain family members were designated dream watchers or smoke tenders, waking throughout the night to add specific herbs to the fire if a dream turned sour or a fever crept in. And it wasn't just the sick who received care, the caregivers were watched too. If someone spent too many nights tending others, they'd be encouraged to rest, eat more, wrap themselves tightly, and even be sung to by children. Because the Longhouse understands the cycle: give care, receive care. Everyone's time comes. Sometimes you're the one stoking the fire, sometimes you're the one being warmed by it. The dogs are alert now too, not anxious, just observant. One pads over to lie beside the boy who coughed, settling near his legs like a living hot water bottle. You swear you see his mother nod in appreciation, almost like she expected it. The dog curls its tail over the boy's feet. Done. You can feel the change in the air now. The smoke is doing its job, not just filling lungs, but sending a message. We're awake, we're watching, we're ready. The Longhouse doesn't panic, it adjusts. You shift slightly, pulling your robe tighter, and let your eyes drift closed again. Your throat is fine, your breath steady, but if it weren't, you know someone would notice. Someone would bring herbs. Someone would share warmth, without question or delay. The fire glows stronger now, embers stirred by a careful hand. Around you, people breathe easier. The Longhouse settles again, its rhythm recalibrated. Sickness is a guest here, unwelcome but not undefeatable. And as long as the fire burns and the smoke rises sweet, the people will sleep. Not afraid, not alone, you're not fully awake, not fully asleep, just floating somewhere in between, in that cozy limbo where time dissolves and your body feels weightless. The fire is burning again, stronger now. You can hear it, not snapping or flaring, but gently rustling like someone turning pages in a thick, smoky book. Someone's tending it, not just feeding it wood, but watching it, coaxing it, almost speaking to it with every careful movement. You open your eyes, barely, and catch a glimpse of the figure crouched by the hearth. It's the same elder from earlier, the one who seems to be stitched into the seams of the Longhouse, always in the right place at the right time. She moves slowly, methodically, stirring the coals with a long stick that's darkened at the end from years of use. She's not trying to build a bonfire, she's crafting a glow. A perfect even heat that radiates outward, not upward. One log at a time, carefully placed, not too dry, not too thick. She adds pine needles, then a twist of cedar bark. Not for warmth, well, not just, but for balance, for spirit. Fire tending isn't a chore here. It's a role, a ritual, a quiet act of leadership that doesn't need words or applause. When you keep the fire alive, you're keeping the people alive, and not just physically. The fire is the heart of the Longhouse, its pulse, its presence. Every person here dreams to the sound of it. Every breath you take is warmed by it. When it falters, the entire rhythm of the house shifts, and that's why someone is always listening. She stirs the embers again, nudging one log just a hair to the left, tilting another to catch the edge of a brighter coal. You can see her eyes reflecting the firelight, sharp, not sleepy. This is her time. Midnight fire tending, when the world is quiet and the flames are whispering secrets only she understands. And she's not alone. A younger girl is nearby watching, maybe 11, maybe 12, wrapped in a hide cloak, blinking through the haze like she's trying not to look too eager. This is her apprenticeship, though she probably doesn't think of it that way. It starts with sitting nearby, watching, learning how the logs are selected, how the air is stirred to breathe life into flame, how the smoke is read like a weather report. Eventually she'll take a turn herself, not tonight, but soon. That's how the knowledge is passed on, not in lectures, in movements, in callants, in long nights beside the fire when everyone else is asleep, and the only voice you need to hear is the crackle of burning pine and the soft shifting of breath. In some Iroquois traditions, fire tending at night is more than a practical task, it's spiritual. There are stories that say the fire must never be left alone, not because it will go out, but because it knows when it's being neglected, that it holds the memory of the ancestors, that it listens, that it needs the companionship of someone awake, watching, listening back. It's a mutual relationship, a quiet partnership formed over thousands of winter nights. There's an open debate among scholars about how regimented this firekeeping practice was. Some argue that it followed formal rotations, assigned members of the household with specific duties. Others suggest it was more fluid, more based on instinct and availability. Who wakes easily, who's comfortable in the dark, who feels the pull to care for the flame. Either way, it's clear that the task was never left to chance. Here's your quirky fact. Some families believed that if the fire was left unattended, mischievous spirits, called by some the night whisperers, could slip in and meddle with your dreams, rearrange your thoughts, or even cause confusion by morning. It wasn't just superstition, it was ingenious. A reminder to keep the flame tended, not just for heat, but for clarity of mind. The elder adds another log now, smaller this time, just enough to keep the rhythm going. She leans back on her heels, surveys her work, then turns her head slightly toward the girl beside her. A look passes between them. No words, just a slow nod. You can tell the girl's heart is about to leap out of her chest. She moves closer, picks up a small stick, and hesitantly nudges the edge of the fire. The elder watches, not correcting, just watching, and the flame accepts it. It's a small moment, insignificant by some standards, but here in this house it's monumental. The passing of responsibility, the layering of tradition. One hand learning from another in the middle of the night, surrounded by the breath of sleeping family. You roll over gently, careful not to disturb the sleeping child still tucked beside you. The air is warmer now, thicker with the comforting scent of cedar and wood smoke. The sound of the fire has changed too. It's livelier, but still respectful. The Longhouse responds with a soft sigh, wood creaking, someone shifting under their furs, a dog letting out a satisfied grunt and snuggling deeper against a human leg. You think about the countless fires that have burned in this house before tonight. Winter's layered like sediment in the bones of the beams. Each night a slightly different configuration of people, stories, dreams and flames. And always, someone watching, someone nudging the log, someone whispering to the coals. The girl has now fully taken over the fire, adding a pinch of herb from the elder's pouch. She's serious, careful, as if the entire universe depends on this moment being done just right. And maybe it does. Maybe in this world this is the centre of the universe, one small flame in the dark, tended by a child learning how to keep others warm. You breathe in and let it all settle. The warmth, the rhythm, the legacy of hands passing heat forward through generations. You understand now why people say the fire never really goes out, even when the embers fade, even when the Longhouse eventually decays. The fire keeps burning in memories and children, in the quiet moments when someone stirs in the dark, adds a log and keeps the night alive. There's something about the darkness after midnight that makes everything feel a little sharper, a little closer. The Longhouse isn't sleeping as deeply now, it's in a different mode, not quite awake, not quite asleep, like the whole structure is holding its breath between worlds. And as your eyes open again, catching the soft flicker of firelight, you notice that the sounds have changed. Fewer snores, more shifting. Someone whispering, someone laughing, just barely, and then silence, except for the crackle of coals and the faint rustle of someone pulling their robe tighter. You're not the only one awake. You can sense it, in the small movements, in the particular hush that only happens when people are intentionally quiet, not just naturally asleep. There's something going on, not dramatic, just subtle, social. The Longhouse after dark has its own rules, not written down, not spoken, but rules nonetheless. There's a quiet etiquette in play, a code. The kind of social choreography that only works because everyone instinctively knows their steps. You've been here long enough now to feel it. The way no one raises their voice, the way people move like drifting smoke, slow, deliberate, unobtrusive. You reach for a cup of water near your mat, careful not to clink it against the edge of the platform. Even that sound would feel like a cymbal crash in this hour. Across the central aisle, two people are speaking, a man and a woman, older but not elderly, maybe husband and wife, maybe not. It's impossible to tell, and in this space it doesn't really matter. Their conversation is hushed, paced with long pauses, the kind of talk that doesn't need a destination. Words simply floated back and forth like embers rising, glowing briefly, then fading into the dark. You learn quickly that this hour, this not yet morning slice of night, is a kind of secret window. Not everyone's asleep, not everyone should be. In Longhouse culture, These hours are when the house breathes differently. People reflect, whisper, move quietly to check on others, trade dreams, share a bit of dried meat or roasted squash soft from a clay pot left near the fire. These aren't interruptions, they're rituals. There's a phrase in some Haudenosaunee dialects that roughly translates to the words between flames. It refers to these late-night conversations, these ember-lit exchanges that happen when the world is dim and hearts are soft. People speak more honestly in this light, more carefully, or they say nothing at all and still communicate everything. And it's not just conversation that has rules, even how you move has a code. If someone gets up to tend the fire or leave the longhouse briefly, they do so slowly, almost ceremonially. You never step between a sleeper and the hearth unless absolutely necessary. That space is sacred, both thermally and spiritually. You don't stomp, you don't clomp across the floor like a runaway moose. You glide. If you accidentally brush someone's foot, you gently place a hand on their shoulder as if to say, "I'm here, no harm." Even your silence says something. It's surprisingly intimate for a space this crowded. You'd think people would be desperate for privacy, but instead everyone seems to know how to create privacy using nothing but behaviour. A glance, a pause, a turned back, a lowered voice. The longhouse isn't just walls and beams, it's a living web of social intelligence. Of course, that intelligence has its unspoken limits. There are things you don't do after dark. You don't speak ill of someone who's sleeping nearby. You don't complain loudly about the cold or about the smoke or about someone snoring. You don't argue, not here, not now. Arguments are for daytime when the sun can keep tempers warm and burn off the chill of words that land wrong. You don't tell certain stories after dark either. Some tales, especially those involving spirits, tricksters, or death, considered dangerous to share at night. Not just culturally inappropriate, but spiritually risky. It's believed that some stories attract attention. And the kind of attention you get after midnight in a longhouse, that's not always human. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about these storytelling taboos. Were they meant to protect children from fear? Were they tied to seasonal rituals? Or were they more pragmatic, an ancient method for managing the psychological weight of a long, communal winter? Whatever the answer, the result is the same. People are careful with their words after the fire dims. Tonight someone breaks the rules just slightly. A young man whispers a ghost story to someone nearby. Quiet, but not that quiet. You hear the punchline, a spirit that sneaks in and swaps your thoughts while you sleep, leaving you confused in the morning. The two boys chuckle, but from deeper in the longhouse a single ahem sounds. Low, not angry, just a vocal eyebrow raise from an elder. And just like that, the laughter stops. Message received. There's a charm to it all. A discipline without strictness. A social order that doesn't need enforcement because everyone knows the cost of disorder. In a space where so many share the same fire, comfort depends on consideration. Nighttime especially. One loud comment, one careless footstep, and you can throw off someone's sleep, someone's warmth, someone's dream. Still, there's room for softness. A couple shares a blanket and murmurs to each other under their breath. Voices barely more than vibrations. Two siblings lie back to back, one reaching back now and then to pat the other's shoulder without waking them. Someone sings, just a fragment of a tune, half asleep, probably not even aware they're doing it. And it fits. All of it fits. Your quirky detail for the hour. Some longhouses had a designated night listener, an elder or middle-aged woman who remained semi-awake through the night, partly as fire tender, partly as emotional radar. If someone woke distressed, or began to cry quietly, or even laughed in their sleep, the night listener would move to their side, speak to them softly, and soothe whatever needed soothing, like a dream nurse. No pay, no title, just another thread in the longhouse's quiet safety net. You shift on your mat, pulling your robe tighter. The firelight dances across the beams above you, throwing slow-moving shadows that flicker like sleeping spirits. No one says it out loud, but you can feel it. This is a sacred hour. Not sacred in the church sense, sacred in the human sense. The house is alive, listening, and everyone inside it is dancing around that fact with graceful, practiced silence. So you close your eyes again, breathe in the wood smoke, and let the rules of the night hold you. You're in good hands, you're in considerate hands, and out here, that might be the warmest kind there is. You wake with a start, though you can't say why. No one touched you, no one screamed. The fire is still burning, low and steady, and the longhouse hums with its usual symphony of quiet snores and crackling logs. But something's different. Not wrong, just weird, like the air shifted, or the dream you were having followed you back into the waking world and forgot to shut the door behind itself. You sit up slowly, your buffalo robe still draped over your shoulders. Everything looks normal, but now you're remembering your dream. And it wasn't just a dream, it was real. Or at least it felt real enough to sit heavy on your chest even now. You were walking through a forest, following the sound of drums that echoed without source. Trees moved like they were breathing. You saw a face in the snow, your own maybe, but older or younger, or not quite human. You don't remember how it ended. Just that you woke up feeling like you'd been dropped into your body from a great height. You look around trying to shake it off, and then you notice something else. You're not alone in this feeling. Across the Longhouse, other people are stirring too, not groaning or stretching like they're just waking up. No, sitting up, looking around, faces puzzled. One person rubs their temples, another mutters under their breath, a third stands up entirely staring at nothing. It's subtle, but unmistakable, a ripple of unease, like a stone dropped in the middle of a still pond. Not panic, just a moment, shared by everyone, without a word spoken. It's not the first time, apparently. The elder near the hearth doesn't seem surprised. She's already moving, reaching for a small pouch from her woven basket. From it, she takes a pinch of dried herb, something sharp and minty, and tosses it into the fire. The coals hiss. A wisp of blue smoke curls upward. The girl from earlier sits up beside them, watching closely, clearly being taught something new. And that's when someone speaks. A middle-aged man, voice hoarse but steady. Did anyone dream of water? It's not a strange question. Not here. In fact, it feels like the exact right question. A woman nods from her mat. Yes, cold river. I was drowning, but I wasn't scared. Another person chimes in. Mine was I was frozen. I was walking across it, but it kept whispering. You blink. What? This isn't some dream-sharing game or early morning circle. This is serious. Quietly serious. No one laughs. No one shrugs. Because in the Longhouse, shared dreams aren't rare. They're accepted. Expected, even. When enough people dream in unison about water, fire, snow, or some nameless shape in the woods, it means something. A warning. A shift. A message too big for one person to carry alone. There's no central interpreter. No official oracle. But everyone listens. Everyone contributes. The elder near the fire says nothing, but her silence is like punctuation. Every now and then she nods, or stirs the coals when someone speaks a particularly charged detail. The ritual is quiet, casual even, but deliberate. A kind of communal dream analysis baked right into the bones of the culture. There's a long-standing scholarly debate about these shared dream events. Some researchers chalk it up to coincidence, cold nights, low-level stress, and smoke-induced semi-consciousness leading to similar themes in people's dreams. Others argue that it's cultural priming. When you grow up hearing stories of dream spirits and shared visions, your brain is more likely to interpret experiences through that lens. And then there's the third camp, the one no university wants to officially acknowledge. Maybe it isn't a coincidence. Here's your quirky historical fact. In some recorded cases, entire communities adjusted plans based on shared dreams. Travel postponed, a hunt redirected, a marriage ceremony rescheduled. The dreams weren't symbolic, they were data. Emotional weather reports from the spiritual realm, and ignoring them was like refusing to look out the window during a blizzard. And tonight, apparently, the theme is water. You didn't dream of drowning, not exactly, but now that you think about it, there was a stream running backward, and the sound of water dripping, endlessly echoing off cave walls that never quite came into view. You didn't mention it before, but now it's rising up your throat like something that needs to be said. You add your voice to the circle. Mine had water too, flowing the wrong way. No one reacts with shock. Just a few nods. One soft murmur of, It's enough. You've done your part. The dream has been given to the group, and now it belongs to everyone. That's the thing about dreams here. They're not personal property. They're community experiences. If you keep a dream to yourself, especially one that arrives on the same night others are stirring from visions, it's not just selfish. It's potentially dangerous. The Longhouse operates like a living brain. When one part dreams, all parts respond. Ignore the signal and the system stumbles. Eventually the conversation dies down. No decisions need to be made, not yet. Maybe someone will consult a storyteller in the morning. Maybe an elder will tell a tale of a similar dream from years ago, when the snow flooded too early or a river froze in spring. But for now, the information has been shared, and the Longhouse, it seems, has exhaled again. People are lying down, the fire steadies. Whatever needed to be acknowledged has been. You lay back, your robe pulled tight, and close your eyes again. But now everything feels a little more connected. You're not just resting under a roof of bark and beams, you're resting inside a mind. A shared consciousness made of breath, dreams, and fur-wrapped hearts beating in rhythm with one another. You don't know what the water meant. You may never know, but you told the dream. And that matters. And when you fall asleep again, it's like slipping into the river you dreamed of. Only this time the current is gentle and you're not alone. You're awake again, not fully, but just enough to know you're not asleep. You stare at the ceiling, those blackened beams crisscrossed like the ribcage of a giant beast, and listen to the Longhouse breathe. You're not cold, not uncomfortable, you're just awake. No dream dragged you here. No sound startled you. It's that rare, stubborn kind of insomnia where your body is warm, your eyes are closed, and still your brain insists on clicking its little flashlight on and wandering the halls. You sigh. You're not alone in this either. Someone across the Longhouse stirs and sits up. Another figure near the fire stands, stretches, and starts carefully rearranging something in a woven basket. 2 teenage girls are whispering softly, sharing what sounds like jokes or half-secrets. You even spot the elder again, awake as always, working with something in her lap, maybe stitching, maybe weaving. In here, insomnia isn't a curse. There's just another rhythm, another nocturnal role in the Longhouse's ecosystem, and it turns out that rhythm is ancient. Long before sleep became something to squeeze between Netflix and your morning alarm, many cultures, especially indigenous ones, saw it not as a single 8-hour block, but as a series of phases, biphasic sleep, polyphasic sleep, naps, waking dreams. It was natural, expected, and frankly kind of encouraged, and nowhere is that clearer than here, in the deep winter quiet of the Longhouse. No one is frustrated to be awake. No one is reaching for melatonin or pacing the floor in existential dread. Insomnia here isn't the enemy, it's opportunity. That's why you see people using the time, not wasting it, not fighting it. Someone's boiling a small pot of water near the fire, dropping in something herbal, wild mint or slippery elm bark, a natural tea to calm the body or settle a sore throat. Another person has picked up their weaving, a mat or sash in progress. Threads dancing between their fingers like they never stop moving, not even in sleep. You quietly sit up and look around. No one stares. No one questions why you're awake. You're simply added to the night's gentle roster. One more insomniac in the unofficial night shift. You spot someone, an older man with a face carved by time, tracing patterns into a patch of soot with a stick. He's not writing anything, just doodling, letting his hand move, maybe untangling thoughts. You wonder how many inventions, stories, or solutions have started this way, scribbled in ash by firelight while the rest of the world dreams. There's a kind of peace to it, a stillness filled with intention. These aren't people lying in bed cursing their brains. They're doing something, weaving, cooking, whispering, tending the fire. And now you're thinking, what did people do before smartphones and streaming and all-night grocery stores? This exact thing. And here's your quirky, delightful fact for tonight. Some longhouses had a tradition called night weaving, where the quiet hours were used specifically for making ceremonial belts, ropes, or beadwork. It was believed the items crafted at night, by the light of the hearth in the hush of communal breath, held special power. Not magic exactly, but meaning. Energy soaked up from the fire, from the dreams swirling around the room, from the honesty of nighttime thoughts. These weren't things made to be sold or shown off. They were meant to be kept, carried, gifted to someone who needed them. Someone behind you sneezes, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quick puff followed by a sniff and the quiet shuffle of a robe being pulled higher. A woman, maybe his sister, sits up and hands him a steaming cup. Tea from earlier. No one talks, no one thanks, it's just done. This is what happens at night. Little exchanges of care that don't need names or recognition. You glance down at your own hands, folded in your lap. What would you do in this world when sleep won't come? You could help tend the fire, or braid strips of reed into something useful. You could just sit and think, listen to the wind scratching gently at the bark walls. Maybe you'd talk to someone, share a story, tell a joke. Maybe you tell a dream that's been sitting in your chest like a stone waiting to be thrown. There's a low murmur near the far hearth. A man is telling a story, not loudly, not theatrically, just a soft tale for anyone awake enough to listen, something about a fox and a storm. You catch only fragments, a blizzard so strong that it turned trees into ghosts, a trickster spirit disguised as an icicle, a lesson about patience, though you're not sure how the icicle ties in. Still you feel it settle into the room like warm mist. Scholars have long debated whether these nighttime activities were cultural necessities or spiritual practices. Some call it practical polyphasic sleep, using the wakeful hours productively. Others argue it's more than that it was a time when the boundary between waking and dreaming was thinner, when the spirit world felt closer, when the words you spoke carried a different kind of weight. Honestly, watching the scene unfold, you'd lean toward the latter. Everything here feels intentional, purposeful, gentle. No one is pushing themselves, no one is performing. They're simply moving in harmony with the house's deeper rhythm. If daytime is the heartbeat, this is the pulse between beats, the silence that holds the music together. Eventually the tea is finished, the weaving is folded, the stick is set down. One by one, people return to their mats, to their robes, to their sleeping partners. The elder by the fire adds one last log, then lays down slowly, sighing as she sinks into the softness of furs and memory. You follow suit, lying back with a kind of ease you didn't expect. You're not frustrated to be awake anymore. You feel lucky, like you've glimpsed something few people get to see, the Longhouse in its dream-walking hours. Outside, the snow is still falling, the wind quieter now, respectful. Inside, the fire hums, night breathes, and sleep, sweet, steady, and finely willing, finds you again. You wake again just as the sky outside begins to hint, barely, at the promise of morning. You can't see the sun, not from inside the Longhouse, but this light is shifting. It's not brighter exactly, just different, cooler somehow, bluer, a slow, creeping reminder that day will eventually come, even here, where night seems endless and time melts between embers and dreams. You're still warm, wrapped tight in your buffalo robe, your breath steady and slow. The fire's low again, more coals than flame, but it's holding. It always holds. You listen for the usual crackle, the low breathing of nearby sleepers, the soft rustle of someone turning on a mat. All still there. But there's a new sound too, one you haven't paid much attention to before. It's above you. Not movement, not footsteps, not snow sliding off the bark roof. It's the sound of the ceiling breathing. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping child still curled near your side, and tilt your head back. Up there, just beneath the smoke hole, the beams and supports, those long bent saplings lashed together into a domed shape, are flexing ever so slightly, expanding, contracting, not groaning, not creaking like something about to break, but moving, alive. It's subtle, but now you realize it's been happening all night. A rhythm you didn't notice until your body finally aligned with the house. The ceiling moves because the air moves, and the air moves because of the way the Longhouse was built, designed not just to stand, but to breathe. You think about how modern homes are sealed tight. No drafts, no leaks, no airflow, unless it's mechanically forced through vents and ducts. But this place, this ancient structure of wood and bark and earth, it breathes with the world outside, not against it, with it. Each beam above you was chosen carefully, not just for strength, but for flexibility. They're young trees, saplings really, bent into arches and lashed at the top, forming that familiar barrel vault shape. Over those, wide strips of bark are layered like scales, overlapping to keep out the rain and snow. And underneath, more wood, crossbeams, smoke darkened and gleaming slightly in the firelight. The smoke hole is still open, just a slit really. You can see the pale blue of pre-dawn through it. A single thread of smoke winds lazily upward toward the sky. The warm air from inside, carrying the scent of cedar, roasted corn and countless dreams, rises and slips through that narrow channel into the world above. The design is no accident. Longhouses were built with airflow in mind. The heat from the hearths rises, carrying smoke with it, and escapes through those narrow vents. But because the house isn't tightly sealed, cooler air drifts in near the base of the walls, gently, slowly, feeding the fire without gusts or chills. It's a circulation system, entirely passive, entirely organic, and astonishingly effective. Architectural historians still debate the efficiency of this system. Some argue the smoke holes would have vented too much heat in the winter, making it hard to maintain warmth. Others believe that the airflow was just right, allowing smoke to exit without losing too much precious heat. There's even speculation that longhouses were intentionally leaky, the way a beehive has open gaps that regulate internal temperature. And here's your quirky fringe fact for the morning. Some builders are convinced that the ceiling beams were intentionally angled in ways that changed airflow based on season, that the geometry of the rafters, the slope, the bend, the spacing, could influence how air moved inside, making the longhouse more breathable in summer and more sealed in winter. There's no solid proof, but if you look up now you can almost believe it. You lie back down and let your eyes trace the lines of the ceiling again. Every poked and spoke stain, every flicker of movement, every lash of sinew holding beam to beam tells a story, not just of craftsmanship but of time. This house didn't go up in a weekend. It was built over weeks, maybe longer, with every part gathered, bent, shaped and placed by hand. And once it stood, it didn't stay static. It lived. It changed with the seasons. It was rebarked, retied, repaired, not torn down and replaced, maintained, like a member of the family. You watch as a small stream of smoke curls upward, then hits a draft near the rafters and drifts sideways along the beams. It's beautiful in a way you didn't expect, mesmerizing, like watching a slow, graceful dance between fire and architecture. And you realize that everyone in this house knows that dance instinctively. They watch the smoke the way a sailor watches the horizon. They know what it means when it flows straight up, or when it curls and pools. It's not just smoke, it's information. Someone stirs nearby, a young man, maybe 15 or 16, and stands up to stretch. He glances up at the ceiling too, following the same path of smoke you just traced. He doesn't say anything, just nods once like the smoke confirmed something for him, then kneels by the fire to adjust the logs. And that's what the ceiling is for, not just shelter, not just a place to hang herbs or keep out the snow, it's a communication system, a partner in survival. You learn to read it, trust it, let it guide your choices, especially in winter. It's easy to forget that a house can be intelligent, that a roof can teach you something, that the air above your head can tell you when to stir the fire, open a vent or pull your robe tighter. The smoke hole itself is fascinating up close when you finally get a clear view of it. It's not a big gaping hole. It's narrow, elongated, often adjustable with bark flaps that can be moved depending on wind and weather. Some holes are centered, others offset. Some longhouses even had multiple small holes instead of one big one, each serving a specific part of the interior, like tiny wooden lungs spaced along a spine. As morning creeps closer, the light above you grows, casting a dull grey wash over the beams. You can see more detail now, the scoring of knife marks where bark was stripped, the subtle warp in one crossbeam from years of heat and humidity, the soot that settled into grooves like ink into old paper. You could read a century in that ceiling if you knew how, and maybe the people here do. You pull the robe tighter around your shoulders and breathe in deep. The air smells like wood and ash and something more. History, maybe. A kind of knowledge that's built not in books, but in layers, of smoke, bark, sweat and snow. The ceiling breathes, the house breathes, and this morning you breathe with it. It's barely dawn, the kind where the sun hasn't quite committed yet, and everything outside still feels dipped in a shade of blue-grey cold. Inside the longhouse, though, there's warmth. More than just heat from the hearth. It's the kind of warmth that comes from bodies, breath, and a hush that's almost conspiratorial. You turn your head, and that's when you notice it. Two figures close together, just beyond the far hearth, tucked under a single buffalo robe. Still, quiet, or close. You're witnessing one of the most delicately choreographed rituals in Longhouse life. Romance. And look, this isn't a Hollywood love scene. There's no swelling music, no candlelight, no privacy at all. What there is, however, is intention. A pair of people sharing warmth in the most literal, practical and time-honoured way. Maybe they're newly paired, or maybe that they've been sharing this hearth for years, through winters and wood smoke and all the ordinary chaos of communal living. Either way, what they're doing, sleeping side by side, hands touching lightly beneath the fur, is intimate in the truest sense. Not flashy, not performative, just close. Romance in the Longhouse doesn't get its own room, it gets a corner. A few whispered words, a carefully arranged robe, and of course a deep understanding of the social rules that make this kind of closeness possible without tipping the entire household into awkward silence and side eyes. You've probably been wondering, how did anyone manage that in a space packed with 20, 30, maybe even 50 people? No doors, no walls, every snore, sneeze and shuffle within earshot. And yet, it happened. Regularly, successfully, lovingly. The trick, as with the most things here, is in the quiet. Everything in a longhouse follows rhythm and respect. Romantic moments are no different. You don't announce your intentions. You don't flaunt affection. If you're a new couple, you might sleep apart at first, gradually shifting your mats closer over days or even weeks. A slow migration of furs. Eventually people start noticing, quietly of course. An elder raises an eyebrow. A sibling teases, but only once, and then without ceremony it's accepted. You share space. You share warmth. You belong. It's not about secrecy. It's about subtlety. There's a social dance happening all the time, and longhouse romance is just one step in it. When two people begin a relationship, everyone knows, but no one needs to talk about it. Not unless the couple chooses to share it aloud, which they might when it's time for a larger ritual or formal union. But until then, the night, the fire, and the buffalo robe do most of the talking. Here's a quirky bit of trivia. In some communities, young people looking to express interest in a potential partner would do so by subtly offering extra warmth. A robe, a bit of space near the fire, maybe even a shared mug of tea before bed. It wasn't flashy, it was functional, and that's what made it meaningful. The offer of comfort in a place where comfort is precious is one of the oldest, most honest love languages there is. And because space is so public, couples learned how to create private moments inside the public ones. A shared glance across the fire, two hands meeting briefly while adding logs. A whispered joke passed between mats. The kind of soft, low intimacy that's built not on isolation, but on knowing how to find each other in a crowd. Of course there were boundaries. Longhouse life had unspoken and sometimes very spoken codes of conduct. Public displays were rare and always subtle. Anything beyond shared warmth was kept respectfully under wraps, literally and figuratively. Couples arranged their blankets strategically. They chose times when the fire was low and most others were asleep, and even then they moved carefully, knowing that privacy was a gift, not a guarantee. Anthropologists love to debate whether the communal nature of longhouse life inhibited romantic or sexual expression. Some argue that the lack of personal space must have limited intimacy, made it awkward, even impossible. Others point to the consistency of long-term partnerships, the presence of children, and the rhythm of life that suggests not only did romance survive, it thrived. And here you are watching two people wrapped together like a secret no one's trying to keep, proving the latter side of that debate with every shared breath. You shift quietly on your mat, not wanting to interrupt the quiet magic happening across the fire. But you also can't help feeling a little warmed by it. And by the way, no one around seems particularly surprised. This isn't a spectacle, it's a part of the natural order. One couple cuddling under a robe doesn't disrupt anything. If anything, it reinforces what the longhouse is really all about: shared space, shared life, shared heat. There's also a beautiful simplicity to it. No dating apps, no long-distance texting, no anxieties about who texts first or how many heart emojis to use. Just shared days of working, cooking, mending, tending fires, and shared nights of sleeping beside one another in sync with the rhythms of the house. And if love fades, if a pair who once shared a robe begins to drift apart, it happens gently, without drama. One person starts sleeping slightly farther from the fire, the other shifts their mats. A quiet separation that doesn't require a breakup speech or a social media announcement. Just a change in the alignment of bodies and blankets, noticed, respected, and accepted. The house doesn't judge, the house makes room. You catch one more glance of the couple. He's still asleep, face nestled in the curve of her neck. She's awake now, watching the ceiling, smiling faintly like someone who's dreamed something good and plans to keep it to herself. She doesn't move, doesn't stir him, just stays there, holding the warmth between them like it's the most natural thing in the world. Because it is. In this house, love isn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It's about fire shared, robes offered, space made. It's about learning how to be close without needing to be loud, about touching hands without touching everyone else's nerves, about being together in a room full of people and still, somehow, managing to find a world of your own. You lie back down, a smile sneaking onto your lips without permission. The longhouse sighs, the ceiling exhales, the fire shifts slightly, casting a soft glow over two figures still wrapped in fur and trust. Love lives here, quietly, steadily, like a hearth that never stops burning. You're not sure if it's the shift in light, the change in air, or just something in your bones, but suddenly, it's morning. Not the kind of morning that slaps you awake with alarm clocks and to-do lists, but the kind that arrives slowly, respectfully, like it knows how hard you work just to make it through another night. There's no sunrise inside the Longhouse, no golden beams streaming through the windows. Instead, the first signs of day are quieter. Bodies stretching, fire being stirred, someone humming low and off-key while tossing a handful of bark shavings into the embers. You sit up slowly, wrapped in your buffalo robe like a breakfast burrito of warmth and bedhead. Around you, others are beginning to do the same. No one rushing, no one snapping to attention. Waking up here isn't an event. It's a process. People rise in layers like the house itself is yawning through them. The fire closest to you is glowing a little brighter now. Someone's already added fresh wood, split dry, cut weeks ago, stacked carefully under a lean-to outside. The morning fire is different from the night fire. It's livelier, a bit hungrier. It has a job to do, to heat up breakfast, chase off the night chill, and signal that the day is beginning whether you're ready or not. You stretch, not a dramatic movie-style stretch, but a real one, the kind that starts in your ribs and works its way to your fingertips. Crackling through your shoulders, your breath hangs lightly in the air, visible for a second before it vanishes, just like the dreams that haven't quite left your mind. Across the room, a girl sits cross-legged beside the hearth, stirring something in a small clay pot that's nestled right at the edge of the coals. Whatever it is, it smells amazing. Earthy, nutty, maybe even a little sweet. You can hear it bubbling gently, and it's clear this isn't her first time making it. She stirs with one hand and adjusts the pot's position with the other, coaxing it to just the right temperature like a mother rocking a fussy baby. It's likely a cornmeal mush or soup, thick, nourishing, the kind of breakfast that sticks to your ribs and carries you through hours of cold, chopping wood, hauling snow, mending tools, or just surviving. If you're lucky, it's been flavoured with maple sugar, dried berries, or rendered bear fat for richness. And yes, that might sound intense if you're used to oatmeal and toast, but once you catch the scent of toasted corn and smoked meat wafting through the air, your stomach votes yes immediately. Mornings in the Longhouse aren't just about food though, they're about rejoining the world. People aren't just waking from sleep, they're reweaving themselves into the tapestry of daily life. Someone combs their hair gently with bone or wooden picks, pulling out knots that curled in the night. A boy yawns, then leans against his grandmother, while she braids his hair with fingers that are cracked but steady. The braiding is slow, rhythmic. You can almost feel the love in each twist. Everywhere you look, there's quiet motion. Furs being folded and rolled, sleeping mats being swept clear of stray bark and fur. Someone slips outside with a basket to retrieve firewood. A dog follows, yawning mid-step, his paws soft against the packed dirt floor. There's a calm energy here, something between reverence and practicality. The house isn't loud yet. It hasn't tipped into full daytime mode, but you can feel it waking, like the structure itself is coming alive, warmed from within, ready to host another day of meals, work, stories, and breath. And then you notice something that almost makes you laugh out loud. People are warming their clothes, not drying them, just warming them. Shirts, wraps, leggings, laid out on racks near the fire, or draped carefully over small wooden frames to catch the heat. Nothing fancy, just the pleasure of pulling on something that doesn't feel like it came out of an icebox. You spot a man lifting his shirt and pressing it against his chest before putting it on, like giving himself a hug. And honestly, it makes sense. There's no better way to start a freezing morning than wrapping your half-asleep body in something toasty. It's a small joy, a detail, but in winter those details matter. Here's your quirky fact for the day. Some communities place their moccasins near the fire overnight, not just to dry them if they were damp from snow, but to make them pliable again. Cold leather gets stiff, and no one wants to fight their footwear before breakfast. In some houses, there were even heated stones set near the fire in the morning, which people would briefly tuck inside their shoes or robes like little prehistoric hot water bottles. Genius. There's something ritualistic in all of it. The way everyone rises in their own time, does their small tasks, helps each other without direction. No one's shouting orders, no one's drawing up a schedule. The Longhouse knows how to wake up, just like it knows how to sleep, how to dream, how to keep its people alive through snow and ice and silence. As the morning continues, someone passes you a small wooden bowl. Inside, corn mush, warm and steaming. It's been sweetened, you can smell it, and the top has a little swirl of something oily, probably bear fat or rendered duck. You dip a carved spoon into it and take a bite. It's earthy, soft, slightly sweet, and absolutely perfect. You don't ask where it came from, you just say thank you with your eyes, and that's enough. Beside you, the child who slept against your side is now sitting up, blinking blearily and rubbing their eyes. You hand them your robe without thinking, and they curl into it without a word. Clutching the warmth like it's a treasure chest full of sunlight, the Longhouse fills slowly with voices. Still quiet, still respectful, but unmistakably awake. Someone hums a song, someone else tells a joke. Laughter ripples across a few hearths, but it's soft, like a ripple in a shallow stream. Outside, the cold waits patiently, knowing it won't be let in for a while. Inside, the people stretch, stir, and begin again, fueled by mush, warmth, and the knowledge that they've made it through another night, wrapped in fire, in furs, and in each other. Your fingers ache a little this morning, not from cold exactly, but from that strange stiffness that creeps in after a night curled tight under fur, your hands half exposed, clutching your robe like it might float away if you let go. You wriggle them gently and they creak to life, joints popping softly like branches cracking under the weight of fresh snow. The Longhouse is fully awake now, though not loud. That morning hush still lingers, the kind where voices are low, movements deliberate, and everyone's wrapped in the kind of silence that feels earned. Someone nearby is already working on their hair. You watch as a woman sits with her legs stretched out in front of her, patiently undoing the long braid she stepped in. Her fingers move slowly, carefully, pulling apart strands that held their shape all through the night. Beside her, a younger girl waits, comb in hand, ready to take over when the braid is undone. It's an everyday act, this grooming, but here it feels ceremonial, like winding the body back up after sleep, resetting the system. Hair matters in this world. It's not just about keeping it neat, it's about connection, between people, between generations, even between the self and the seasons. A Longhouse morning isn't complete without someone braiding someone else's hair, often in total silence. The gesture more about presence than appearance. The elder who braided her granddaughter's hair yesterday is today having her own hair gently combed by someone else. It moves like a cycle, a loop of care. You reach up and run a hand through your own tangled mess and, yeah, okay, you could use a braid or two. Your scalp feels tight, like it's still carrying dreams from the night before. But there's no rush. No one here rushes in the morning unless something's on fire, and even then, they'd probably do it with grace and good posture. Fingers braid while others boil water. It's not just tea this time. Someone's making a kind of warm rinse for washing, an infusion of cedar, maybe sweetgrass, maybe something sharper like spruce. The steam rolls off the surface in gentle waves, and people take turns dipping cloths into it, wringing them out, and wiping down their faces, necks, and hands. There's no full bath, not in this season, but this little ritual is more than enough to make you feel human again. You take your turn, pressing the warm cloth to your face, inhaling deeply. The scent is grounding. Forest, fire, something green and ancient. It cuts through the sleep in your bones and brings you all the way back to yourself. When you wipe your hands, your skin feels both raw and renewed. This, you realize, is morning in the Longhouse, not a jolt, but a return, a reconnection, with the body, with each other, with the house itself. And it's not just humans who need attention. The dogs are awake now too, stretching in slow-motion arcs, tongues lolling, tails swishing against mats. One of them, probably the same one who curled up by your feet last night, nudges your ankle, not asking for food, just saying hi. You reach down and scratch behind its ears, earning a pleased sigh and a little lean into your hand. There's no leash, no command, just understanding. Outside the Longhouse, you can hear someone already chopping wood. The rhythm of axe against stump is muted by the walls, but steady. Each thunk is a note in the morning's unfolding music. Another person's brushing snow off the bark siding with a bundle of branches tied together like a broom. They're knocking off the build-up before the sun turns it into ice, which would weigh too heavily on the roof. It's maintenance, yes, but it's also ritual. Care for the house so the house can care for you. And inside, someone else is warming up their fingers. Literally. A boy sits near the fire with his hands held out, palms down, not too close, just near enough to get the blood flowing. His fingers are red from cold, but he's patient, turning them slowly, flexing them. Maybe he'll spend the day carving, or sewing, or repairing snowshoes. Whatever it is, his tools need nimble fingers, and he knows it. This is his warm-up, not just physically but a mentally moment of quiet, firelit focus. This brings us to your scholarly debate of the hour. Were mornings in the Longhouse structured or fluid? Some anthropologists argue there was a specific order. First fire tending, then grooming, then breakfast, then work. Others believe mornings unfolded organically, with people taking on tasks as needed, guided by experience and habit rather than a strict routine. The truth, like most things, is probably a mix. Some tasks happen out of necessity, others flow from instinct, and all of it, you suspect, is smoother when nobody's shouting instructions. Here's your odd little fact to chew on with breakfast. In some longhouses, hair care had seasonal meaning. During the coldest months, certain families would add ceremonial elements to their grooming, braids tied in specific patterns believed to protect against spiritual vulnerability. In the quiet hush of winter, when dreams are potent and nights are long, even your hair becomes part of the armour. Someone hands you a woven band, soft, flexible, dyed with plant pigment into patterns you don't recognise but instinctively like. You thank them without speaking, wrapping it around your head to keep your hair out of your face. It smells faintly of smoke and river water. Everything does. By now, the Longhouse is humming. Fires are fully relit. Soup is bubbling. Water is steaming. Dogs are curled and uncurling. People are greeting each other softly, with small smiles and sleep-stiff arms stretching out for one another. No one seems stressed. No one's running late. The Longhouse wakes not like a machine powering on, but like a forest opening to light. Quiet, slow, inevitable. You feel it too. The stiffness leaving your fingers, the breath deepening in your chest, the awareness that you're about to begin another day of living closely with others, moving in rhythm with the fire, the cold, the chores, and the stories yet to be told. You're not just awake, you're woken, and the Longhouse, like a giant wooden body with dozens of hearts inside, stretches toward morning with you. You're not even halfway through your second bowl of corn mush when someone carries in a basket of roasted squash and everything changes. The smell hits you first, sweet, earthy, rich, like butter, and campfire had a delicious baby. And your stomach actually growls out loud, embarrassing itself in front of the entire Longhouse. Not that anyone notices, or if they do, they smile in that soft, non-judgmental way that says, "Yeah, me too." Because food here isn't just fuel, it's heat, it's strength, it's survival, served one steaming bowl at a time. You lean over and inhale the scent like it's a full-body experience, because honestly it is. Someone ladles a thick scoop of the squash into your bowl, then adds a spoonful of rendered duck fat on top. It glistens, golden and fragrant, and immediately melts into the hot mash like it was meant to be there all along. No seasoning packets, no sodium bombs, just fat, squash, and fire. You take a bite and nearly dissolve. It's creamy and sweet, but smoky too, with the kind of depth that only comes from food roasted low and slow in the coals, maybe even buried in ashes overnight. This is winter food. Serious food. The kind that doesn't just keep you alive, but gives you the energy to split logs, haul water, scrape hides, chase dogs, and wrangle the freezing reality of life without central heating. It's food with purpose, and the people who make it do so with the understanding that taste and nutrition aren't mutually exclusive. They're one and the same. You glance around and see others eating in the same quietly focused way, each bowl held close, steam curling around sleepy faces. Elders get served first. That's not a rule you break. Children next, especially the little ones who burned off half their body weight just by being tiny heat sponges all night. Everyone else waits. No complaints. Hunger is understood, but so is order, and the food keeps coming. Next is a rich, brothy stew made from dried beans, hominy, bits of smoked venison, and maybe a handful of dried cranberries for tartness. It's been simmering for hours, maybe all night, in a heavy clay pot beside the fire, absorbing every bit of heat and smoke like it has something to prove. When it hits your tongue, you taste layers: earthy beans, sweet corn, gamey meat, and a faint tang that cuts through the richness like a cool breeze. This isn't just breakfast. This is strategy. People eat more fat in winter. It's deliberate. The cold doesn't just press against your skin, it eats into your energy stores like a slow, relentless fire. You need insulation inside and out. That's why duck fat, bear fat, even marrow are cherished. Not wasted, not skimmed off, savoured. Every spoonful of grease is a spoonful of warmth. And yes, modern nutritionists would probably faint at the cholesterol. But here, no one's counting macros. They were counting hours of daylight. Calories are allies. Rich, fatty foods don't just sustain, they shield. There's a charming fringe theory that the winter diet in Longhouses was intentionally sedative. That the richness, the warm heaviness of the food helped calm bodies, soften tempers, and encourage deep rest through the long dark nights. Could be true. Could just be that everyone was too full to argue. Either way, it makes a weird kind of sense. And that brings us to your scholarly debate of the meal. How much of the Longhouse winter diet was pre-planned versus improvised? Some researchers believe indigenous foodways followed strict seasonal cycles, with food gathered, preserved, and portioned out months in advance, almost like rationing. Others argue there was flexibility, adaptation based on trade, climate variation, or even shared surplus between households. But what everyone agrees on is that waste wasn't an option. Not in winter. Every scrap mattered. Even the bones, which might be boiled down into broth, crushed for marrow, or carved into tools. Someone beside you is finishing their bowl, scraping it clean with a piece of flat cornbread. You follow their lead, and the texture is perfect. Dense, chewy, with just enough char from the hearthstones. No forks, no knives, no napkins, just hands, bowls, and the universal understanding that food eaten with your fingers somehow tastes better. A young boy runs past, trailing his robe like a superhero cape, and is intercepted mid-flight by his older sister, who plunks him down beside her and hands him a hot bowl of stew. He scowls but eats. You smile. The system works. There's laughter now, low, pleasant, relaxed. People are waking not just physically, but socially. A few jokes, some teasing. Someone makes a crack about a man snoring loud enough to scare bears, and the laughter that follows is genuine, not forced, like the Longhouse itself is laughing with them. And then there's the sound of someone singing. Just a few lines, a melody that loops and spirals, soothing and strong. A food song, a gratitude song. Maybe a song of preparation or memory. The kind that reminds you food isn't just nourishment, it's story, it's history. It's the result of someone else's hands working long before you opened your eyes this morning. You glance around and notice something you hadn't before. The sheer number of hands that touch this food before it reaches your bowl. Someone trapped the animal. Someone dried the corn. Someone tended the fire all night so the stew could simmer. Someone woke up before the rest to stir it, to taste it, to make sure it was ready. It's communal. It's deliberate. And now it's inside you. Warmth travelling from gut to limbs to fingers, chasing away whatever cold the night left behind. A final bite. The squash is gone, the broth wiped clean. You hand back your bowl and rub your hands together. Not because they're cold, but because they're ready. Breakfast here doesn't just fill you up. It prepares you for work, for cold, for life inside a structure built of bark and breath. The Longhouse is buzzing now, dogs barking, someone clearing space for mending, a kid dragging a sled rope and getting scolded for doing it indoors. And through it all, the smell of food still lingers in the air. Fat, fire, and memory. You sit a little straighter. The cold is still out there, yes, waiting. But inside your stomach is full, your body is warm, and the Longhouse is alive. You're fed. You're fueled. You're ready. Correction noted. This is section 22. Thanks for your patience. Now, let's step back into the Longhouse, where things are about to shift from soft, sleepy morning into full-blown winter hustle. You don't even notice it at first. That moment when the Longhouse shifts from just waking up to ready for business. 1 second you're stretching by the fire. The next, someone's sharpening a bone, all with an expression of deep, breakfast-fueled focus. The chatter is louder now, still warm, still respectful, but undeniably awake. Children are being bundled up for outdoor tasks. Adults are unrolling tools from leather wraps. A couple of people are already outside, judging by the whoosh of cold air that swirls in when the bark slab door is lifted and dropped again. You're not exempt from the movement. No one's barking orders or handing out clipboards, but there's an unmistakable expectation in the air. Contribute. Not because you're being watched, but because here, work isn't punishment. It's presence. It's belonging. And in winter, especially this kind of brutal, unforgiving winter, everyone plays their part. It's amazing how much there is to do even inside Yidumado. You'd think winter would freeze life into a kind of domestic coma, but instead, it just redirects the energy inward. The Longhouse becomes a hive, and each person is a moving, buzzing part of it. One woman is scraping a stretched hide near her platform, tiny curls of fur and dried flesh gathering beneath her blade. She works steadily, methodically, like her hands know more than her eyes. You can tell this isn't a first-time job. That hide will become clothing, snowshoe, webbing, maybe even a storage pouch. For now, it's just a blank canvas slowly cleaned by a practiced rhythm. Nearby, someone else is twisting cordage. They use their thigh to roll fibres, likely from milkweed or basswood, into thin, strong strands. Their fingers move fast but not hurried. Cordage is life here. It ties snowshoes, lashes poles, hangs baskets, repairs what would otherwise break. It's the duct tape of this world, but handmade, one twist at a time. You find your own place in the motion. Someone passes you a bundle of split kindling to sort, separating pieces by size. Not glamorous, but essential. The fire won't keep itself alive, and no one wants to fumble with wet logs when the coals start to fade. You settle beside the hearth, arranging wood into piles, quick burn kindling, mid-sized sticks, larger logs. As you do, you notice a young girl watching you. She's holding her own little bundle, waiting for a signal. You nod. She sits down. Together, you sort. No one speaks, but the rhythm is there. Touch, place, breathe. And in this quiet little task, there's an unspoken welcome. You're not just a guest anymore. You're a cog in the machine, and there's a quiet kind of pride in that. Here's something scholars still argue about. Just how formal were these winter work routines? Some argue that longhouses followed strict seasonal schedules, with daily tasks mapped out based on family roles, age, or gender. Others insist the structure was looser, driven by immediate needs and individual ability. And honestly, watching this unfold, you'd say it's a blend. There was an order, yes, but also instinct. People step into roles the same way they step into conversation, fluidly, without pause, without needing to ask who's in charge. And speaking of instinct, let's talk snowshoes. A young man near the back is checking the webbing on his pair, running his thumb along the lacing like a musician tuning a well-worn instrument. Snowshoes are lifelines. Without them, even the strongest legs would be useless in the deep drifts outside. The frames are made of bent ashwood, strong, flexible, and steamed into shape. The webbing is often rawhide, soaked and stretched and knotted, till it forms a perfect net for walking on top of snow rather than through it. And guess what? Snowshoe maintenance is a winter job. You don't just toss them by the door and hope they're still in shape come morning. You inspect them, tighten the bindings, check for wear, replace a frayed strap before it snaps 5 miles from home in a blizzard. It's a skill passed down, not just taught, and every knot tells a story. Where it's been, what it's carried, how it held up under pressure. Here's your offbeat little fact for today. Some snowshoe makers would personalise their frames, not just for foot size, but for walking style. A lighter, narrower shoe for fast runners, a broader frame for heavy load carriers. Some even left decorative notches or tiny carvings at the toe, symbols that marked ownership, lineage, or sometimes just personal flair. Because yes, even in the ice-blasted survival mode of winter, people still find ways to express themselves. Back inside, the tasks continue. Someone's mending a fur-lined mitten, carefully restitching a seam with sinew thread. Another is tending to a damaged clay pot, rubbing a thin paste of ash and clay into a fracture, smoothing it with practiced fingertips, tools, containers, clothing, none of it's disposable. Everything gets fixed, reused, adapted. Waste isn't just frowned upon, it's unthinkable. Even the scraps have second lives. The bark shavings from kindling become tinder. The leftover bits of hide become ties, laces, or even baby toys. Someone nearby is sewing beads onto a strip of cloth, delicate, bright, a flash of colour against the dull winter hues. Decoration, yes, but also identity. This beadwork might be for a pouch or a belt or a child's coat. It says something even when no one reads it aloud. And in the background always is the fire. Still burning, still central. You catch yourself glancing at it now and then, like checking a heartbeat. It's your clock, your anchor. You place a few of the kindling pieces you sorted earlier beside the coals, and someone nods in silent thanks. The heat radiates outward, wrapping around your legs like a sleeping dog. By midday, the energy is full but not frantic. People pause, stretch, step outside to cool off, and every person inside the Longhouse knows that this rhythm, this dance of heat, work and warmth, is what keeps the cold at bay. Not just the physical cold, but the other kind. The kind that comes from feeling useless, unseen, alone, but here, with your hands full, your body warm, your name may be still unspoken, but your presence accepted. You are none of those things. You're not just surviving winter in a Longhouse, you're part of the reason everyone else can. The door flap lifts with a thunk, and in rushes a gust of pure wild winter, sharp as flint and loud as a drum, slapping the Longhouse with its frozen breath. You flinch before you even realise it, instinctively pulling your robe tighter as snow flurries swirl in and settle for a moment on the dirt floor. The cold air cuts straight through the warmth you've spent hours building up inside, and for a second, the entire Longhouse pauses. Not with panic, but with that subtle collective intake of breath that says, uh-oh. The wind follows someone in, two someones actually, bundled in fur cloaks crusted with ice and snow, their hoods stiff from frozen breath. The taller of the two slams the bark door shut behind them, but it's too late. The cold has made its grand entrance, and it's not leaving quietly. You're going to want to hear this, the shorter one mutters, brushing snow from their shoulders with a hand red and raw. Drifts are up past the door lintel on the north side. It's still coming down, fast. Everyone starts moving then. But it's not chaos. It's coordination. Chores shift. Tasks adjust. The entire household pivots around the new reality. The Longhouse is getting buried. And when that happens, it's not just a poetic exaggeration. You step outside, reluctantly, instantly regretting it, and see it for yourself. Snow, thick and heavy, curling over the edge of the Longhouse like it's trying to smother it. The sky is a blanket of grey, low and surly. The air feels like the inside of an ice cave, and every exhale turns into steam that drifts and vanishes before your eyes. It's beautiful in a brutal sort of way. Back inside, things kick into action. People reinforce the doors, stacking woven mats and bark slabs around the entryway to slow down the draft. Others check the inner walls for cracks or leaks. Anywhere snow could creep in and melt into trouble. A couple of elders begin moving sleeping mats closer to the fire, knowing that when the wind rises, the edges of the Longhouse lose their heat fastest. This kind of storm isn't just an inconvenience. It's a test of planning, of structure, of each other. And while you're marvelling at how swiftly and calmly everyone adapts, someone hands you a job. You're sent to help seal the vent flaps, those narrow openings near the smoke holes that usually help with airflow. Today they're working against you. Too much heat is escaping and the draft is pulling cold air in faster than the fires can fight it. So you climb up onto the raised platform and help a girl, maybe 12 or 13, press fitted bark strips into place, pinning them with the wooden pegs and soft rope. Her fingers move like she's done this dozens of times before. Yours, not so much, but you follow her lead and before long the wind's lost its grip on the ceiling. Meanwhile the fires are being stoked like they're going to war. Bigger logs, more frequent tending and double the watch. Someone's assigned to each hearth now, their sole job to keep the flames alive and the coals glowing red hot. It's not just about comfort anymore, it's about temperature control. With the doors sealed and vents covered, the Longhouse becomes a delicate ecosystem. Too much fire, and the air becomes smoky, choking. Too little, and frost creeps up the walls from the inside. Which brings us to the big debate that still echoes through academic circles. How did people regulate temperature inside a sealed Longhouse without suffocating? Some historians argue that the smoke holes were enough, even partially closed. Others believe the architecture itself, its curved ceiling, overlapping bark and strategic draft gaps, was carefully designed to balance heat and airflow. There's even a theory that some families slept closer to the walls on purpose, embracing the coldest part of the house to allow elders or babies to sleep nearer the fire. Whatever the science behind it, you're watching it work in real time. The heat holds. The Longhouse doesn't just survive the storm, it responds to it. It adapts. You adapt. And now comes the weirdest part. It gets quieter. With the doors sealed and the wind howling outside, the world shrinks. The sounds of axes, dogs, birds, even distant voices. Gone. It's like someone pressed a wool blanket against your ears. You can still hear inside the house. The fire popping, someone sharpening a knife, the soft thunk of moccasins on dirt. But outside, it might as well be the moon. That silence is eerie at first, like the Longhouse has been buried alive. But then it settles into something else, something comforting. You're cocooned now, sealed in with 30 or so other souls, riding out the storm like seeds in a pod. There's a fringe theory among some Indigenous knowledge keepers that storms like this were never feared, they were welcomed. Not just for the snow they brought, but for the stillness, for the rare moment when everyone was forced to pause, to slow down, to reflect. Some even believed that these sealed days were perfect for certain kinds of stories, ones you didn't tell unless the wind was loud enough to carry the words safely away. You get a taste of that as the chores wind down. People start gathering again, wrapped in robes and blankets, sitting closer than usual to the hearths. Children curl into their parents, young couples sit back to back. Elders close their eyes, leaning their weight into the warmth of others. And then, quietly, someone begins to speak. It's not a fire story, not a spirit tale, it's a memory. A snowstorm like this one years ago, when the door froze shut and they had to dig their way out with spoons. After rippled through the house, not raucous but real. Another voice jumps in, a tale about a dog who got trapped on the roof after sneaking up to chase a squirrel. A third story, darker now, about a year when the tinge of snow didn't stop for 3 days and food had to be rationed down to spoonfuls. The Longhouse listens. You're not cold anymore, or scared. You're part of the group now, part of the sealed world that happens when snowstorms force everyone into each other's company, and the Longhouse becomes more than shelter. It becomes memory, story, pause. The storm rages on, throwing snow against the bark with what sounds like fury. But inside, wrapped in firelight, laughter, and layers of hidden humanity, you realise something. The house doesn't just keep you warm, it keeps you together. The storm doesn't end quickly. That would be too easy. Instead, it lingers, settling into its full dramatic power, like it knows you have nowhere else to be. Hour after hour, it throws snow and wind against the bark walls with theatrical flourish, whistling around the corners like a ghost demanding entry. But the Longhouse holds. Of course it does. It was built not just for this, but with this in mind. The structure isn't panicking, neither is anyone inside. You're all just waiting. And honestly, it's kind of peaceful. The sealed door makes everything feel smaller, closer. There's a rhythm now, a snowstorm rhythm. It's different from a regular winter day. No one's fetching water, no one's outside splitting wood or checking traps. Even the dogs have given up pacing and curled into little brown donuts beside the fire. The Longhouse has shifted into its rarest form, the true indoors day. Not lazy, but inward. Like everyone's turtled into their own fur-lined shell of quiet activity and low conversation. You find yourself watching the fire more than usual, really watching it. Not just as a heat source, but as a creature. Alive. Temperamental, endlessly hungry. The way it dances and licks at the logs, spitting tiny sparks that spiral and vanish. The way the smoke sinks upward, writhing and twisting before disappearing into the rafters. Someone adds a log with practiced ease and the flames adjust like they were expecting it. The fire's personality changes during storms. You've noticed. It burns lower, steadier. No time for showboating. It knows the stakes. It's the heart of the house now more than ever. Everyone keeps a respectful distance, but you're all facing it, watching it, relying on it like a friend who always shows up when it counts. Someone's boiling water again, not for tea this time, but for steam. They place smooth river stones in the coals, wait until they glow faintly, then drop them one at a time into a bark-lined bowl of water. Shh. Steam billows upward, carrying the scent of pine and maybe a hint of sweet fern. People lean in slowly, breathing deep, letting the moist air coat their lungs and warm their faces. It's not quite a sweat lodge, but it serves a similar purpose. Medicine through heat. Breathing space in a house full of breath. You're handed a cloth. You dip it into the steaming bowl, wring it out, and press it to your chest. The warmth seeps into your ribs. You didn't realise how tight your breathing had gotten, maybe from the cold, maybe from sleeping in awkward positions, maybe just from being in close quarters for so long. But this steam, this tiny ritual, it cracks you open gently. Nearby, a woman is crushing dried herbs with a stone, preparing a paste that smells sharp and minty, wintergreen maybe. She mixes it with bear fat in a shallow dish, then passes it to another person who massages it into an elder's aching knees. No words, just care. You can't help but marvel at the number of treatments that don't require speech, just hands and patience and time. Which brings us to your curious little fringe fact for today. Some longhouses were known to keep specific storm bundles, small caches of dried medicine, herbs, charms, or even carved stones set aside for days exactly like this. Not everyday use, not ceremonial, just for the moment when everyone was stuck inside and the world outside turned white and wild. These bundles weren't always used, but their presence mattered. A symbol of preparedness, of readiness, of resilience bundled in string and belief. Someone passes around a carved rattle and begins to shake it slowly, rhythmically. It's not a song, not yet, just a beat. A soft chicka-chicka that weaves itself into the house's already pulsing soundscape, the pop of the fire, the wind outside, the murmur of voices. And then someone else joins in, humming a low tune. No lyrics, just vibration. The Longhouse listens. It's not entertainment, it's grounding. In a world that's temporarily shrunk down to a single room, rituals like this remind you where you are. Not just physically, but emotionally. You're here, alive, safe together. You catch someone smiling across the hearth, half hidden behind a fur-lined hood. Not at you exactly, just smiling. At the moment, at the warmth, at the simplicity of being sealed inside with everything you need. Later, a child pulls out a game, pieces of bone or carved antler, laid out on a mat in patterns you don't recognize. It looks like something between checkers and chance. A few others gather around. The storm ignored for now as laughter erupts over a particularly clever move or a lucky roll. The game's rules aren't explained aloud, they're just understood. And even if you're not playing, just watching is enough to feel included. And now for your scholarly debate. How did Longhouse dwellers keep from going stir-crazy during storms that lasted days? Some historians think storytelling was the primary tool keeping minds engaged through epic oral tradition. Others suggest that communal crafting, singing, even games like the one you're watching were just as critical. Still others argue that the structure itself, the design, the space, was the balance of privacy and openness, helped prevent tension. No walls, yes, but layers, social layers, spatial layers, enough distance between tasks and hearths to allow everyone a little mental room, and it works. Even now, as the snow piles higher outside and the wind hurls insults at the bark siding, no one inside seems rattled. Tired, maybe, restless, sure, but not distressed. You stretch your legs, sip some tea, and feel the house shift gently beneath you. Not physically, but emotionally, like a body resettling into comfort. One of the elders begins to speak again. This time it's a teaching story, slow, deliberate, each phrase separated by long pauses. A tale of a woman who carried a flame inside her chest, who walked through snowstorms and never let it go out. The room goes quiet. The fire crackles in rhythm with the story. You don't know the ending. You don't need to. The point is the telling, the stillness, the warmth shared by everyone leaning just slightly forward, closer to the flame. The storm still hasn't stopped, but somehow it feels less threatening now, like an old familiar song playing outside the window. Loud, yes, but not scary. You're warm, you're full, your breath is slow. You press your hand to the ground and feel the warmth of the fire's reach. The Longhouse hums like a heartbeat. Let the snow come. You're not going anywhere. You wake to silence so deep it feels like snow itself has crept into your ears and decided to stay. For a moment, you're not sure what time it is. Morning? Midday? Night again? The fire is down to glowing embers, and the Longhouse is steeped in a kind of muffled stillness. Not dead quiet, just suspended. The wind has stopped. No more rattling bark siding, no more snow hammering the roof. Just that deep, heavy silence that comes when winter finally exhales. Someone's already awake, of course. Probably a few someones. You hear gentle footsteps, the shuffling of feet over dirt, the sound of wood being stacked carefully near the hearth. But the energy is different today. Not tense, not chaotic, but cautious. Like everyone's waiting to see what the world looks like when the door opens. The door, by the way, is buried. That's clear. You notice a couple of people conferring near the entrance, their broad breath puffing little clouds into the air as they quietly strategize. One of them lifts the flap to peek outside and is greeted by a dense wall of white. No sunlight, no trees, no path, just snow, packed firm and high like the earth built a barricade while everyone slept. No one panics. This isn't new. The Longhouse is prepared. You help where you can, buckets are passed. Brooms made of bundled twigs come out. Someone fetches a long-handled wooden shovel, the kind used exactly for this purpose. And then the digging begins. Not frantic, rhythmic, efficient. Snow is scooped, lifted, tossed aside into growing banks as the doorway is slowly, carefully cleared. You take your turn, the cold air biting at your face, the snow heavy and dense from pressure. It's like shoveling packed flour that wants very much to stay exactly where it is. But still, you work. Scoop, toss, repeat. And as the snow wall begins to shrink, you feel the space around you start to breathe again. Eventually light breaks through, a dull grey beam that pierces the top of the drift and glows faintly through the bark slats. Someone gives a quiet cheer, more a sigh of relief than a celebration. A few minutes later, the entrance is open enough for a head to poke through. You wait. Then someone calls back. "It stopped." Just those two words. Not poetic, not dramatic, but shift everything. It stopped. The storm is over. Slowly, people make their way to the door. Some still wrapped in robes, others dressed for venturing out. You follow, blinking as your eyes adjust to the blinding brightness that spills in. The snow reflects every scrap of light like a mirror, and for a moment you feel like you've stepped into a dream. Outside, the world has been remade. The snow is deep, easily waist-high, maybe more in places, but smooth, untouched. A perfect blanket draped over the earth, hiding the chaos it caused just hours ago. The trees are frosted, silent. No birds yet, no wind, just the crunch of cautious footsteps and the heavy thud of snow being cleared from around the entrance. And then you look back at the Longhouse. It's stunning. The bark siding is nearly invisible beneath the snow, only the very top showing in places. The roof is curved and white like a sleeping animal curled against the storm. Smoke rises gently from the vents again, curling lazily into the calm sky. The house looks like part of the earth now, half hidden, half awake. Someone begins brushing snow away from the sides, careful not to damage the bark. Another person's already checking the roof beams, pressing their hand to the wood to test for weight and stress. It's a well-rehearsed dance. The Longhouse might be fine, but you never assume. You check, you listen, and the house listens back. Inside, the fire is restoked. People return from outside with pink cheeks and cold fingers, brushing snow from their shoulders. Someone brings in a basket of kindling they dug out from a stash kept under an overhang. Still dry, still usable. No one complains, no one sulks. There's even a bit of energy in the air, something close to joy. Surviving a storm like this isn't just endurance, it's accomplishment. You settle back into your space near the fire, muscles tired but pleasantly sore. Someone hands you a bowl of hot broth, rich with bone and fat and something herbal. You sip it slowly, feeling the warmth return to the places that the snow tried to steal. And as the Longhouse settles into this new post-storm rhythm, it's clear you didn't just make it through the blizzard, you weathered it together. Here's your final quirky fact before bed. Some oral histories describe the Longhouse not just as a building, but as a being, a living residence with its own moods, energy, even preferences. A grandmother, some say, wise, warm, a little cranky if disrespected. And honestly, after days sealed inside her belly, listening to her creak and breathe and protect you from the wrath of the season, it's not hard to believe. And now for the last scholarly debate we'll toss gently into the fire. Was winter in the Longhouse primarily about survival or connection? You've seen the answer unfold across every section of this story. Every shared robe, every silent chore, every whispered tale told between storms. Winter wasn't just endured, it was inhabited, fully, richly, deeply. And somehow you're not frozen, not even close. You smell like smoke and stew. Your hair's a little tangled, your hands are rough and your legs ache from shoveling snow, but your heart is warm. You survived a winter inside a Longhouse without freezing to death. And somehow, you kind of don't want to leave, so here you are, on the other side of it. Not just the storm, not just the cold, but the full experience of living, breathing, and sleeping your way through a Longhouse winter. You've felt the fire's slow rhythm. You've shared blankets and broth, tucked yourself into layers of fur and trust. You've listened to stories older than the trees the house is made from, and maybe, without even noticing, you've changed. Funny how that works. You started this journey wondering how anyone could possibly sleep in a wooden structure with no insulation surrounded by snow without turning into a human popsicle. But now you know. The answer isn't set magic. It's community, it's design, it's rhythm. It's every quiet moment spent tending a fire, wrapping a child in furs, or turning a soup spoon slowly while the wind screams just outside the wall. And sure, you still smell like smoke. Your hair is a tangled mess. You probably have bits of bark in your sleeves and fur in places fur should never be. But you also carry something else now, something quieter, a kind of knowing. You know what it feels like to sleep with a dozen other heartbeats surrounding you, each one a drum keeping the cold at bay. You know how warmth travels not just through fire or fat, but through closeness, care, and shared space. You know what it means to make it through. The Longhouse was never just shelter. It was survival shaped into structure, a warm, breathing vessel for bodies, stories, and dreams. And now, it's part of your memory too. A place your mind can revisit when the night outside gets too sharp or the silence in your own room feels too wide. So if you made it all the way to the end, first of all, well done. Second of all, go ahead and exhale. Deeply. You've earned it. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let this story settle into your bones like coals under a blanket. You're safe, you're warm, you're home.